What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Season Gaming Bitcast. I almost messed it up right out the start. Episode 255. I am your host, Ainsley Bowden, back with another Sunday conversation and a very exciting one for me personally today, and I hope for you as well. So we've not only got the full cast of characters back, but we have a special guest today, and we'll be talking about a lot of things relating to game development and all of the things that go with it. So let me jump around the room here. So looking very dark and devilish this morning, Mr. Travis. How we doing?
Hi. I'm not that devilish, I promise.
Well,
nice to be
that
here.
Black on black tie here? Black tie on black shirt?
This is a purple tie.
Oh, gotcha.
It's dark purple. It looks blue on the camera, though.
It does look blue. Yeah.
And yeah, glad to be here, Tyler. Nice to meet you. Excited to talk to somebody from Respawn. Very talented team. Although the picture here, this what do you call it? YouTube photo, thumbnail. That's what the word I was looking for. It looks like we're interviewing his dog.
Yeah, Murph.
Yeah. And we can make that happen if you'd like.
I'm all for it.
He's generally more agreeable and more enjoyable than I am.
Oh, wow. I've never interviewed a dog, but I'm open to it. Yeah.
I think between Tyler, Dan, and me, you're probably more likely to get a better conversation out of the dogs than us, honestly.
I've just accepted that generally people want to interact with him before me. That's fine. I mean, I do too.
Fair enough. Travis. Hoeg, looking bright this morning, my friend. How we doing?
I'm doing okay. Good morning.
Dan is currently selling some vases on eBay, apparently, and he's working through that during the show. How we doing, Mr. Rodriguez?
I'm doing good. I got my, look at this. Hold on, look at this. I got my dog shirt on. You like that?
Oh, yes.
Loki and Bean. This is what I got for Father's Day. So,
that's awesome.
My wife is hilarious. I love it. My favorite shirt now.
I like that all that I can see is the top of the t-shirt.
Yeah, I thought it was for us, Dan. I thought it was for us originally.
Yeah, I'll get one with like you three on here for the next one, and just put your names underneath. But yeah,
that'd be good.
I'm ready. Ready to go. Let's do it.
Excellent. And joining us this week is Mr. Tyler Heytred Owens from Respawn Entertainment. How we doing, man?
I'm doing really well. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate y'all having me, and looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, man. I know I'm super excited. We've talked about this for a while now. I had to work through some things to have you on, but he is, if you're not familiar with Tyler, works on Apex Legends, also worked on Halo Infinite, and actually used to compete in Halo professionally at one point in time, at the professional level, I should say. So obviously he and I were chatting prior to the show, which I'm very excited about, but we will get into a lot of that.
Quick correction, just fun. It was Halo 5.
Oh, nice. I like this view because it cuts out.
Dan has already left the show, apparently. He gave us 3 minutes of his time.
That was good. I was going to ask.
Wouldn't be a show without Dan screwing things up. How we doing, brother?
I guess he accidentally hit goodbye.
Probably.
I might have hit like the Windows computer.
Halo 5, anyway, on the correction.
Yeah. Yes. No worries.
Yeah.
No one would accuse me of playing Halo of any type professionally, so it's all good.
Yeah, I used to compete back in the day. I sort of gave up on it at one point. I left my team to go join the army and sort of competed as I could from the
IRL.
Around then. Yeah, I even traveled from Germany, where I was stationed, all the way to Providence, Rhode Island for an MLG tournament in 2011. But it was extremely, valuable and useful time, really, and it was lots of fun. Still friends with so many of those people.
Yeah,
nice.
It's amazing.
Is your father Mephisto?
Nice, I like it. Good joke. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make his sister Lilith.
Yeah, he's the son.
Tell her
of
I said hi. Yeah,
Tyler Heytred.
That tracks too.
Yeah, that checks out. Yeah. All right. So why don't we, before we get into some of the specifics we want to talk to you about, Tyler, with regard to kind of game development and a lot of things around that, why don't we talk about kind of what games we're actively playing? I know that Hoeg and Dan were talking more and more about Final Fantasy 16, which I want to hear about because I actually didn't play it anymore this week, so I'm still in the same spot I was last week. And there's a lot of other things to touch on as well. But first, let me hear about Final Fantasy 16, guys, because Hoeg, your journey has kind of been all over the place with it based on your tweets. Where we at?
They promised us a roller coaster, and it's been delivering for me. But yes, I've discovered an entire portion of the gaming community that I didn't know existed by saying, wow, I really like Final Fantasy 16, but it's got more Kingdom Hearts nonsense than I was expecting. And that became my most viewed tweet ever. I might have broken Twitter. This is hard to say.
Out of everything you've tweeted and some of those viral tweets, that was your biggest tweet ever?
I get it. As soon as he said what the tweet was, I knew exactly who is talking to him. And guess what? As somebody who's reviewed numerous JRPGs and anime-esque games, and some of those he's given not good scores to, I know this group very well. They're in my DMs on a regular basis to do things like.
It's funny to me, right? Because Kingdom Hearts nonsense. I'm trying not to spoil anything. The game just came out, and so I'm not saying anything very specifically. And everybody kind of brings their own notion of what Kingdom Hearts nonsense is to the table. So, like, you got people coming to me and saying, "Well, you just don't like friendship," and I was like, "Well, I've never been accused of that." But that's not what I'm talking about anyway, friend.
I think Final Fantasy RPGs, Kingdom Hearts definitely go off the rails in their own fashion.
Yep.
Agreed. And for the record, I don't like friendship. So mark me down.
I don't like friendship. I mean, we know that. Yeah. But yes, I was very surprised about that particular tweet taking off. But it is the case that Final Fantasy 16, which I've played a lot more of than you, Ains, it sounds like, has a certain tone that it wants to achieve and to present itself as early on. And there's one element of that story that is, I don't think, a great fit for what the game otherwise is. And I'm not even sure that the development team's heart is in it. Honestly, it's not great. It's not implemented well. We could talk about that more extensively in some kind of spoiler cast mode or otherwise, but for right now, what I would say is I love the game. It's very likely to be my game of the year at this point in time, even with Zelda and Diablo out there and Starfield coming. But it's not landing the plane very smoothly.
Did you play Dave the Diver, though?
So, no, I was told last week that it was available on my Switch, but it's not on my Switch, so I have not played Dave the Diver.
Damn it, Travis.
It's on Steam initially. It's coming to Switch soon.
What I was playing just before this show was a new mystery game from the Danganronpa team called Raincode.
Yes, I've seen reviews for it.
I was really enjoying. It's very, very weird.
Apparently very good, though. Got pretty strong reviews, if I remember.
But to those of you on Twitter that told me that I'm just trying to say I don't like Japanese games with that tweet.
That was a good one.
I saw that. Crazy.
Yeah.
I said Japanese people, actually. That was my specific thing.
I had a number of comments that accused me of lying about having played all the Final Fantasies.
True.
Who would lie about this? What does this gain me?
People on the internet love making up a headcanon about you. I mean, just...
Wow. He's a radical YouTuber who hates the Japanese and has never played a Final Fantasy game in his life. That's the Hoeg we know.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we represent here.
I suggested you get a shirt that says that, but, I'm the shirt guy, I guess. Maybe I'll get one that says Hoeg hates the Japanese and just wear That's what we'll do.
Dan, how far are you into it?
I am approximately, according to PlayStation, 87% through the game.
So
that is, it's pretty far. I love it. I mean, I think it's really fun. I'm surprised that like the combat was kind of the main thing people were fearing now that you've seen it, because there's a lot of elements that are missing that used to be, like just the party system in general. I that's the biggest miss for me. It's really not I don't feel like I'm really connected with all the other characters that are there so much. It's more they're kind of there to move the story forward, to kind of build to your character a little bit, but there's no, there's really no stakes with them because I have no control over them. There's no, I can't do anything with their, whatever they're equipped with. and that's a whole nother thing. The I don't know if it's the economy or if it's the way you upgrade your gear and stuff. That's hogwash. I mean, it's just
right. It doesn't really exist. It's not
it's
really
not
an
there.
RPG. I mean, I think that needs to
No,
be
I don't
said.
think so. Yeah, it's definitely not.
But I agree with you completely on the party system, and people might hear it as, oh, you need more menus and RPG systems and equipment. No, I think what Final Fantasy was really good at was multiple perspectives and multiple arcs through a giant world-changing story. And this loses that in favor of the kind of normal hero monomyth kind of thing. And I think that that's a loss, that it feels less like Final Fantasy for that, which I will already be getting tweets about, because I understand it is a Final Fantasy. I did see the title screen, but it is lacking certain of the things in breadth and scope that I like so much. And ironically, in the first Final Fantasy, to take it down to one person that isn't even emulating Game of Thrones so much as copying it, Game of Thrones came to prominence, really well known for multiple perspectives on a worldwide conflict. And that isn't present in Final Fantasy 16.
Nope.
You guys are not inspiring me to continue with this too much. Sorry, Travis, didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, it's still really, really good. That's the thing. Like, even outside of like the combat is so well done. It's not Devil May Cry. Even people can say that. It's not. It's really something different. It may be Devil May Cry with like all these bells and whistles added onto it, and it's really, and I think it's pretty challenging.
It's funny. I would describe it as simpler than Devil May Cry.
Really? Because man,
I think it's significantly simpler.
I always remember playing Devil May Cry and just button mashing the hell out of stuff, and I can't do that here. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of, especially with like some of the bigger bosses and some of these hunts that you go on or whatever. They're very, you know, they're tough, man. For me, I mean, I'm not very good generally at these games, so you know, I'm not gonna say they're. I mean, I can finish them, so obviously they're not like Souls-like levels of stuff, but there's some tough bosses out there. I mean, some of them regular fights that I've been, you know, I feel a little bit more comfortable in, but I mean, I've loved it so far. And I don't know, I haven't played a whole lot of Kingdom Hearts, so I don't know what Kingdom Heartsy means, but you know, I'm just gonna,
nobody does.
Yeah, apparently nobody else does either. So
whatever you like about Kingdom Hearts, I personally assaulted and insulted your family.
Yes, by just saying that one thing. I saw it, man. It was kind of wild. You know,
yeah, you shouldn't have done that, man. It wasn't very nice.
And the Japanese.
It's gonna eat all of your posts.
When more people get to the end of this, I think they're gonna see what I'm talking about. But right now, they just think I hate Kingdom Hearts, which I like Kingdom Hearts enough. But even if it has similar themes to Final Fantasy in certain ways, it was always the more superficial and worsely told version of those themes. And to see that in mainline Final Fantasy doesn't fill me with joy.
I have heard from people who have played it. I think our reviewer is like 80 hours into it now, and he said that it does kind of go off the rails at one point. And he said that there are very kind of slog periods within the game mixed between these superb kind of highs, right?
So it is a JRPG, is what I'm hearing.
Well, interestingly, some of the highs, which I assume are for the most part the icon fights.
Yeah, those things are disgusting.
There are some that are great that I love, and there are some that are, in my opinion, bad. Like, hold the button down for 5 separate boss transformations and get to the end, all while butt rock plays in your ears. It's all good stuff. But I think what people are responding to is the scope of them. They're huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know that they are as good as people have suggested, but the game overall is great. And what I love about Final Fantasy or any kind of speculative fiction is world building, and it's in there. You can see it. The lore is great. That active time lore system is good, but for all that realism, it does just launch itself directly off the cliff and over the now life-giving mountain.
I feel like I should have hit that already, but
you did,
or I did, and I just didn't realize how far off the cliff because the rest of it was so far off the cliff already. I guess. I mean, I didn't. I played. There's a lot of stuff I don't understand. Even with I think the active time lore stuff is awesome. I think there's like that one person you can go to and get like the whole,
Yes,
how everything.
Every game should have tomes.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, this is the fact that somebody made you pay for the lore part of it. With Golem, it's crazy to me. This is so well done. Golem. I don't care. Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're out of business.
Put some respect on his fake name.
I should have. But the thing, it's. I love the icon battles. I love that kind of stuff. I don't know where it went off the rails for you necessarily. I can, but I still don't understand half the stuff that happened in the first 4 hours. Like they never come back and explain some of the things. I'm just like, like how did this happen? Like why is this person here? That's the more even going back and looking at all this stuff, it doesn't really get that detailed, and maybe.
But you're coming close to talking about the Kingdom Hearts nonsense, which is when I say it in that tweet is about mystery for the sake of mystery, and this kind of we're going to introduce concepts and voices and different languages or terms or things that we're going to say are going to be important. And to this game's credit, they explain everything, but it's done in this way that is just designed to make you feel like it's mysterious, when if you told the story in a more normal fashion, it wouldn't be as mysterious, but it would be more approachable and engaging at the time that you're actually experiencing these things.
Yeah. All right. That's Kingdom Hearts nonsense. All right. I got you. Then yes, you are correct.
Storytelling style.
Yeah. I'm not tweeting that, but I will agree with you. Yeah.
Coward.
I believe they would say craven.
Yeah. My 30 followers will probably be, all over it. Yeah.
Alex, go ahead.
No, just say full send it. Always.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan. What do you got to lose?
Yeah,
Twitter, it doesn't even work. No one's going to see it anyway, so don't worry about it.
Fair.
Yeah. Alex said in the chat, who's our reviewer for it, said it's definitely about the scale and the spectacle of those fights than the mechanical complexity of them.
Oh yeah, it's not that hard.
Yeah,
but it's awesome looking.
I agree too. I think some of the cinematic quality of transitioning from gameplay directly to high fidelity, action scenes with tons of scope and then immediately back to gameplay. I mean, all of that is definitely part of the spectacle. But it's also like in my opinion, in those regards, for sure, the game is like a technical masterclass in that respect. I have lots of opinions. I'm about 40 hours in now.
Share them. Go. What do you think?
I don't know. I love the game. It's like Hoeg and Dan said, it's not an RPG in the same sense that you would think most Final Fantasy games are. I think a lot of people, maybe misrepresented what it was meant to be or the setting was going to be, in this gritty, grounded, sort of realistic Western narrative, like Western in the sense of, more like Game of Thrones or whatnot, narrative. And it's really not. I mean, it's still a Final Fantasy Kingdom Hearts game, where it goes off the rails and it becomes less grounded. But even though those weren't my expectations, and I went in really skeptical, honestly, I wasn't even going to buy the game. Even though Final Fantasy is among my favorite series of all time, Final Fantasy 7 and those PlayStation era games. Final Fantasy 6 is my favorite game of all time.
Yes, now you're talking our language.
And
which one?
like
6?
Final 6.
Yeah,
6.
Perfect. All right.
I see the fingerprints of all of those games all over this one, and I feel like maybe I look into it too much or give the team too much credit. But even the things that I initially disliked about the game, the more I thought about them, I'm like, oh wow, that might make actual lots of sense. Like for example, the lack of like an open world, right? And there's these like sort of sectioned stages and levels that you load. And initially to me I was like, man, this is like something that's really missing from the Final Fantasy experience to me, is this big exploration in the scale of this world. But also when I think about the game and the various side quests and how so much of the narrative and what you would get from your party and these different perspectives are really spread out throughout the world now. Like there's these side quest characters and stuff that persist throughout the story who have these like growing character arcs that all sort of start to develop over time. And so where I felt like the party was missing, or the open world was missing, I noticed that there was really thoughtful application, in my opinion, of like some of those elements in other areas, right? Like I do feel somewhat attached and connected to people of the world, like Martha and some of these Otto and some of these other like NPCs. And so like I find myself just consistently impressed or my expectations exceeded, because like I'm trying to think critically about it as like, hardcore Final Fantasy fan, and ask myself, like, is this a Final Fantasy game? And in lots of respects it's not, but I think overall it definitely it is. I just think about like, how much easier it would be to develop a game with this much interconnected story and elements, with you've got a map where you load different stages. So, like little things like that, it seems like a gameplay element change that's different than Final Fantasy, but really like it lends to the quality of the overall experience, I think, in itself, because you have these stories that, I guess progress like through these side quests through the whole game. So I don't know. I think overall I'm having a ton of fun with it. The story is kind of wacky and crazy, but it's intriguing to me. I mean, I think it's an interesting critique on Western society and the working class, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on there, and I'm having a lot of fun. So
nice. Travis, you're not playing it, right?
I am. I'm like 7 hours into it.
Oh, you're like me then. Yeah. Can't really comment too much on the broader scope.
Yeah, I'm gonna get through it eventually. It's on my list of things to do. I'm working on other stuff right now, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah. The thing I'm really struggling with, I know we talked about this last week, but like I hate hand holding. I want to do what and there's a lot of that. And the RPG elements, the equipment, the kind of character building is almost non-existent, like you guys have said. And sadly, that's usually like the thing I love most. So I'm struggling. Like I think for me, who already spends way too much time on live service games, like we always talk about Diablo, Halo, etc., like finding the time to put 50, 60, 70 hours into this from an action game perspective, which to me is what it is, or action adventure, however you want to classify it, is going to be
action
tough.
RPG.
I don't know if I'll do it.
Don't you know it's an action RPG?
I actually agree. That's the hardest part for me, is that the pacing of a lot of the cutscenes too. Like Dan and Hoeg mentioned, like the big cinematic pieces are incredible.
Right.
Some of the most gripping moments in games I've probably ever had, if not like, some of the most compelling recently. I mean, it definitely contender for game of the year to me. But like, yeah, like the cutscene pacing and whatnot makes it really difficult for me to sit down and play in a large chunk. I find myself doing it in between like cleaning the kitchen and stuff. It's like I play for a little bit on the living room, and then it goes into a cutscene, and I just turn it up and walk into the kitchen and start doing dishes and listen to him talk. Same. Because it's just like I want to know what's going on, but I really just don't have 18 minutes to sit here and listen to you talk.
Yeah.
And as you said, the quality on them is extremely high. Like its voice acting is superb. The cinematic quality is superb. And even like the framing of those things is excellent. I was going
to say, this is one of the few games that has establishing shots for locations and has music that fades out at the end of the cutscene instead of like these hard cuts into
great music, by the way, too.
Next. Like it's got these little bits of polish that a lot of games skip, and I think are well worth celebrating because it makes the whole experience smoother.
Agreed.
Regardless of how I feel about plot elements.
Yeah, I think that's sorry to cut you off. I experienced that as well a lot. And that's why I think a lot of those elements where I thought were negatives for me have turned into positives, because that's like a direct result to me of exactly that. Like, the stages and the sort of like the way that the side quests are broken up make it such that the game can easily transition you into these cutscenes. Like they've structured the game very intense, like purposefully for cinematic quality. And it really shows. Like I've tried to break like side quests, like transitions by like, starting the animation and doing something, and I just haven't been able to. And that's not normal. Like it's normally pretty easy to break most games.
That's cool. Yeah, that's what I'm struggling with. It's like, do I want to plod through the things I don't like about the game to enjoy these highs, right? The things, and I don't know if I will or not. I guess we'll see. But that's good. I know that a couple guys at SG are really deep into the game now and really enjoying it. They've said very similar things to what we've all just said, that despite the various kind of minor drawbacks that they would call out, even some that aren't so minor, it's up there on their game of the year list, and they really, really love it. So
which I wasn't expecting.
No, you like, were pretty critical of this from the jump. So the fact you saying it's your game of the year right now is a big shift.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, because it's that engrossing and I've enjoyed it that much. But I think it's more than the sum of its parts. Like, I think the combat is significantly less technical than I would have anticipated, or that I thought they were selling for a period there, which is okay with me. I don't want super technical Devil May Cry combat, but it's simpler than I thought it would be. And I think the world, which I also was a little bit worried about when you see the like Final Fantasy Tactics map and everything's set up in separate locations, actually works mostly just fine. A number of the waypoints actually are connected in one map, which I think is cool. It makes it feel bigger than it otherwise is. The only criticism I would have of any of that is it does have a little bit of Final Fantasy 14 feel in it, in terms of you never get gradation of like woods to desert. So you just have locations that are biomes. And that's very much kind of Final Fantasy 14 or an MMO, where you show up in the northern wastes or the desert kingdom or whatever, and it's just, that's what it is.
Yeah. Kind of a set level. Yeah, it's funny you said that, because Nubalax in our chat literally just said they basically did a single player Final Fantasy 14 here.
There's a direct
Absolutely.
line from 14 to 16.
Absolutely.
I guess that's to be expected, but you can absolutely see it right down to the glowing lines that say you're going to exit the area.
Yeah, some of the boss encounter attacks feel just straight out of 14, and even the like event messaging in the UI, like for text and stuff, is right out of Final Fantasy 14.
I mean, it makes sense. You've got shared development resources. I mean, Final Fantasy 14 is a huge success to begin with. Why would you not kind of overlap some of that?
Yeah, like the turning in of items for quests is like, oh, that feels like the little gray boxes.
Cool. Well, I didn't. That's good insight on Final Fantasy 16. I've got I don't know. I keep debating whether I'm going to turn it on or not, and then I go play Halo or Diablo instead, which is pretty much any game, to be honest. So I'll give it a shot. But Travis, you said you're working on other things. I am, dude. There's just a few games that take up 90% of my time, for real. I know you talked about Dave the Diver last week. Looks like you're obviously not alone. Really high reviews on that game. A lot of people kind of preaching to go play it for people. So if you missed that and you missed, did you talk about it fully last week? Why can't I remember? I couldn't remember if your embargo was up or not.
I think my embargo was not up. It went on Monday. Okay. Well, it actually went live that night at midnight. So.
Oh, okay. So you want to? Do you mind touching on it real quick?
Yeah, sure. I gave it a 9 out of 10. It was almost my first 10 out of 10. It is an extremely good game. It's one of those games you never really see coming, and the less you know about it, the better. But it just continually surprises you and is very fun and interesting and weird. And it kind of reminds me of how games should be, right? It doesn't take itself seriously. It's just silly and really addictive. And every time you think you've seen everything, they throw something else completely out of nowhere. Not all their ideas work, but they never stop trying to just do weird and interesting stuff and keep making the game interesting. And yeah, it's you can play it on the Steam Deck. I guess their Switch release date must be a little after their Steam release date, but it does have like a V1, like the full. You can play it through the full game to the credits now, which is cool because it was an early access game. For those who don't know, you could play the first 3 chapters for a while now, which is why I was able to talk about some of it last week, because a lot of it was playable already. But yeah, it was a really cool game. I'm glad I randomly decided to review it because it was super fun and one of the better games I played this year. And now I'm on to my next review, which I can talk about because it's a game that is already out. A little background on this game: it was one I was supposed to review, and then the publisher said they weren't going to give early copies to anyone. And having played the game, I now understand why. It is not good. It's not a good game. It is a Switch party game called Everybody 1-2 Switch.
Oh, I'm playing
follow-up. Yeah, it is a follow-up to I believe it was the launch title for the Nintendo Switch called 1-2 Switch.
Yes.
That was kind of an interesting party game, but more of like a showcasing of what Switch technology could do and the fun stuff you could do with the Joy-Cons and all that. And this follow-up is I had 8 people at my house yesterday to play it, and I don't think they're my friends anymore.
Well, what you need is my daughter, because it was the big hit in Hoeg House yesterday. Except for Horace. How do you feel about Horace? My girls do not love Horace.
Horace is a creepy guy. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like how his face suddenly transitions to CGI and he like bites carrots and stuff.
That's actually exactly what my daughter said. She was like, "No, his mouth moved."
It's jarring.
No, it's not good.
It's jarring. Yeah, it's like he's a character with a rubber horse mask. You know that iconic horse mask.
Oh, that's what I saw people tweeting about the horse with the horse mask. I'm like, what are we talking about?
And then
anyway.
It's clearly a guy in a rubber mask, just like gesticulating while VO talks as him. But then every once in a while, it'll like bizarrely transition to like a rubbery CGI version of the horse mask, and he'll like do things like talk out of his horse mouth and eat a carrot or something like that, and you're just like, oh god, I really didn't like the way that looked. But yeah, it's one of those games where you play mini games and somebody tries to win, but the problem is the mini games are like largely not interesting. There's one where you do a quiz, but the quiz is like, what are monkeys known for climbing trees? Yes or no? Like that's the quiz. It's just like
we had a lot of fun hiding the Joy-Cons.
Yeah, so hiding the Joy-Cons was one that was actually kind of interesting, and then there was one more. Okay, I have to talk about the ninja mini game in that. I don't know if you've played the ninja.
I haven't played ninja. I think UFO and hiding the Joy-Cons was the favorites.
Okay, I don't know if I've seen the UFO one. There's this one where it's a great idea for a minigame. One person is a ninja with a sword, and everybody else on the opposite team is a ninja with shurikens, and you're supposed to surround the player and throw ninja stars at them, and the person who's the ninja with the sword has to wait and then slice the shurikens, and their win con is that they don't get hit by any of the shurikens and they cut them all, and the win con of the ninjas is one person has to hit them at some point.
Is this an on-screen thing, or are you like swinging Joy-Cons?
You're swinging Joy-Cons. It's a game that's going to be really hard to show in a review because there's really like I can't show what was happening in the room. Like my footage yesterday for the game that was the most fun, which was hiding the Joy-Con, it's just a screen saying hide the Joy-Con, right? Like I can't show the pandemonium that was happening in my living room, right? I can't show that. So I have no idea how I'm going to show this game, to be honest with you. But anyway, the game is so poorly thought out because the only way that you block it, you're supposed to surround the person and throw shurikens, but direction doesn't matter, right? So like if you hear somebody throw a Joy-Con because that makes a very loud noise when a shuriken is thrown, all you have to do is move your Joy-Con at all, and it'll like count it as a hit, right? So you're surrounded by people with shurikens, but that doesn't matter.
So it's not 360. It's literally just.
It's not 360. You literally just go, huh. And
you're supposed to play act, Travis. Open your imagination door.
Yes, I'm trying to do that. The problem is that a meta developed in my household, which is that if you cannot hear the shurikens being thrown because of the TV volume is drowned out by the noise of banshee screams from the other players, then it becomes impossible to block the shurikens because it's 100% noise based. So literally the cannon in my house began as soon as it was time for the shurikens to throw ninja stars. Everyone on the ninja star team started screaming in your ears as loudly as they possibly could, so you couldn't possibly hear the television or any shurikens being thrown, and then they would throw shurikens at you while you weren't really sure what was going on. And it was horrifying. It was truly, it ruined my day. I don't know.
This all sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. Anyway, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to give it. I've only put a couple hours into it yesterday, but it was. I'm going to play more of it today. Luckily, the cool thing about this is I got this because they didn't give early access copies. I got it on Friday, and then this 4th of July weekend, it has me going to a lot of places with groups. So it's like been a great opportunity to just like try it. Like there's an IGN party on 4th of July that I'm going to, and I think there's going to be like 30 or 40 people there, and I'm going to try to get them to all play the game because it has a 100 player mode. Everybody can play on their phones, so you can have like 50 ninjas throwing shurikens and banshees.
Can you make sure they all scream at you?
Yeah, I'm going to really try to go deaf this week is my goal. but yeah, it's it's a silly game. I haven't played enough to really come out on it, except to say that I get why the publisher held it back. It clearly has polish issues and doesn't really. At least the initial premise was that nobody wanted to play this game with me and my friend group. They were just like, please don't make me do that again. So
maybe Nintendo held it back because they were worried about cynical San Franciscans.
Maybe it's possible. It's possible. I mean, if your own daughters were freaked out by the horse head,
they don't like the horse. They don't like Horace.
Yeah, if they don't like Horace, the host of the show, that's kind of not a good sign for their child audience.
Yikes!
Yeah,
yikes!
How many did you play? Did you play like 1 20-minute match? What was?
We played 120 with the Joy-Cons and 120 with the smart devices.
Yeah, and they have different games. Oh yeah, here's another thing, like an anecdote about this game is, we went to play a mode and it was like you have to take photos of things. So everybody has it open on their phone and it's like, oh, this mini game requires you to take photos, and then everybody clicks on their phone, join game, and as soon as they do, it cancels the game. And the reason it canceled it was because half of the players in the room had their camera turned off for their browser, and the game was just like, oh, like that you don't know. Nope, not playing the game, and it just skipped it. And it was like, well, you can turn the camera on for the browser, like you just go into settings and you do it. But the game just like canceled the game and like moved on, so we didn't get to play that one. So it's got like these weird like technology problems where it needs access to like your camera and your microphone and like other stuff, and you have to be using a browser, and sometimes you're using a Joy-Con, and it's just got like these weird like setting up the game if you're joining on a phone takes like 10 minutes. It takes like a long time. And if you're using Joy-Cons, everybody has to like one at a time enter their name on the Joy-Cons. So when you join Jackbox and it's like really easy, everybody just types their name in and they join.
Yeah.
In this one, it's like, all right, everybody one by one, click A on your Joy-Con, type out your name using the keypad, the digital keypad on screen, and then click go. And then you're waiting for everybody to do that. If you have like 10 players, it takes a long time. Like I was like, dude, I feel like we've been trying to start this game for like 30 minutes. So and then somebody accidentally backed out and it deleted all the names. It made you like rejoin and re-enter all the names. It's just like, oh my God, dude. Seriously, we all have to retype our names again. So yeah, just these weird like tech problems where you're just like, oh, that kind of bothers me. But yeah.
Shout out to Jackbox, by the way. Amazing games.
Shout out to Jackbox, great game. You're frozen, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
You look great.
Yeah, that's a good still frame of me right there. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought maybe it was just his reaction, like just constant reaction to Travis's description of this game. Just like, no.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, I'm glad to hear that Hoeg's kids liked it, because my first thought was this is very clearly meant for kids, and I don't think kids would be amused by it. That was my first thought, because just I was thinking about myself as a kid. I was like, I was smarter than that. Like, I didn't think like pumping a balloon, like, because like there's some mini games where I'm like, okay, this was in Mario Party like 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Like this was in Mario Party like a long time ago. There's one where like you pump balloons, but you can't pump them too big or they'll pop, and then I was just like, but that's not like, it doesn't really do a good job of showcasing like anything unique about the Switch. And so far, at least the phone integration stuff hasn't been that unique either. So that was just my initial thought, but I'm glad to hear that your kids liked it. I'd be curious to see if they continue to like it, or if every mini game you play it one time and then after that it's pretty much dead to you. Because that was we got 2 games we had to play twice, and the second time we were like, oh my God, like kill my family, I don't want to be here for this. Yeah, one of them was like a game where kids scream at you that they want ice cream, and then you have to remember their orders and then tell the screen how many orange sherbets were ordered by these kids that screamed at you out of your TV, and you're just like now I'm doing retail. Like what is this? I don't know.
Training for low wage job. Like
I've lived that in real life. I don't want to pay for a game to do that to me. I'm good, thank you.
I always love Nintendo being weird.
So do I. I love. I'm
this
happy
game unemployment escapism. Is that what that is?
My daughter loves Job Simulator.
Yeah, there you go. Job Simulator is a popular game in Europe where they don't have jobs.
By the way, there's so many simulators now. Like, I think you can. They're endless.
It's true.
It's crazy.
Steam Simulator.
Yeah. So I want to mention, I haven't played it yet, so I can't even really talk about it, but I at least want to mention BattleBit, because I've had multiple people reach out to me about this game. If you're not familiar with BattleBit, it is an early access on Steam right now. It is a large-scale multiplayer shooter in the vein of like classic Battlefield, where 254 players, 254, yeah, on a server. But it is kind of low poly look, right? For lack of a better comparison, it looks like Minecraft, but it plays like Battlefield with destructibility and weapons and vehicles and all this stuff. And one of the guys at SG reached out to me last night, shout out to Eric, saying, hey, you got to pick this up. We got to play it. And I've heard a couple other people talk about how fun it is as well. So apparently, from what I understand, it's made by a handful of devs. It's in early access. They're still working on it. From what I've seen, it's really blown up. It, like one day last week on Steam, is with the best-selling game, and it kind of like caught on fire. So really cool to see, but I only installed it this morning. I'm looking forward to playing it. But if anyone out there in the chat is playing it or checking it out, or let us know. But it sounds really cool to me. And some of the video footage and gameplay I've seen is really cool.
Yeah, so I picked it up last week. I think we talked about that, and I played a couple matches since then, and think it's a very clever, interesting game. It definitely reminds me of like older Battlefields. Obviously, the graphics are kind of the novelty of it, but it didn't really bother me. I kind of forgot that it looked low poly after a while. I was just like, shooting rocket launchers and getting gunned down by people in helicopters and stuff. So it was cool.
Yeah, it's I think it's an interesting thing because obviously, and Tyler, you could obviously speak to this better than any of us, but a game like Battlefield 2042, which saw tons of issues as we all know, but has become quite good since. What they're trying to do in that game is so advanced technically with everything going on the screen that when you break it down to what BattleBit's done is they want to take that kind of fun aspect of a bunch of players, just chaotic sandbox, but make it so that from probably a data processing perspective, it's a lot more streamlined than something like Battlefield, which allows them to, create that kind of large scale craziness with a much smaller development team. So I think that's really kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, I think also like if you in the instances like that game, like you want to get as many people into your game and to like be able to experience the hook as fast as possible, right? And capitalize on it. And I think by like, reducing the fidelity of the game, honestly, like increases accessibility in some aspects too, right? Like the how many people who have the hardware capable of getting on and enjoying your game at its best, or at least providing what is part of your hook, right? And for Battlefield style games, a lot of it is the high visual fidelity realism, right? And if you don't have the machine to experience that hook, right, like you're not going to see the long-term success in a live service environment or even a multiplayer environment, right? So I think it's a really smart and cool game. It's just going to be interesting to see how they capitalize on it because, when players finally get their eyes on your game and then get into your game, you're going to start running into issues that you didn't expect. And how you respond to those is critical.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure they're getting inundated with things as we speak. By the way, a bunch of people asking, yes, Elu said it's $15, at least in the US. I believe it's $20 Canadian because Eric's in Canada. So whatever that translates to where you are. But yeah, it's $15 early access. There is like a supporter pack you can buy for like another $15. Comes with a bunch of skins and, supports the game as it goes through early access to full release. But yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out. It kind of made waves this week. So anything like that, I like to check out and see what they're doing. Be cool. Any other games we want to touch on before we jump to bigger topics, boys?
No.
Topics.
No, I don't think so. Mostly Final Fantasy 16 for me.
That's been it for me. Yeah.
But lots of fun stuff on the Switch, especially if you like horsemen.
Which apparently a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
As soon as I finish 16, I'm finally diving into Diablo. So I'm excited for that.
Ooh, you haven't touched it yet?
I played a little bit during the beta. It was just really busy and didn't get to it release. Had trouble finding a character I liked, and then I made a rogue and messed around, got to like level 10 and found, I guess, my fun in it.
Okay.
But then Final Fantasy 16 dropped and literally pulled me away the next day.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Diablo is, I'm a kind of a fanatic. I reviewed it, and it's mostly what I've played for the past month and a half or so. But it's amazing. I've got hundreds of hours into it already. But yeah, huge game.
I treat games like that like a recovering addict might with, you know, a relapse, in the sense that those games I can just disappear in forever. You know, and so I almost have to like create a barrier where I'm like, don't lose, you know, your social life and everything to Diablo, because it's very easy for me to just click my life away.
Yeah, no doubt. My main barb is a 74, I think, right now. My sorceress alt is a 19 or something. I don't know, but I'm waiting for the season now. So they're doing a live stream, if you didn't see, July 6th. So that's what?
6th, yeah. I'm covering
Thursday, where they're talking about season 1. That's coming later in the month. And you know, the seasonal approach would be similar in terms of creating a character and going through the seasonal objectives like they've done in, you know, past Diablos. So I'm trying to decide now what I want to do in terms of my seasonal character. I'm either going to go a druid again, which I did in the review period, and I loved and miss, or I may go a melee rogue too. I like melee classes. So yeah, I'm excited about that, but continues to get a lot of play. And then other than that, playing Halo. Season 4 came out last week. Add some nice quality of life things. Add some new ranked mode, which is good, and new maps. And it's been a good experience. It's been fun. Still very sweaty, very competitive, and you know, drives you crazy at times. But also, it's an experience that just isn't replicated anywhere else. So, but anyway, all right, Tyler, jump over some questions with you, my friend.
That's me.
Yeah, I think that one of the things we've talked about a lot, and one of the reasons I began engaging with you on Twitter to begin with, and kind of, you know, began following you, and we started talking, is really around your insight. I think that I really appreciate some of the threads you've done on, I would say, larger topics or misconceptions around game development that there are plenty of on Twitter and social space, right, from gamers. And I think that when devs like you speak up and say, hey, here's probably what's really going on, right? Not what you may think is or assume is going on. Those are really great. And I love reading those things. And I think that your capability to kind of break things down, especially knowing that you work, we talk a lot on the show about live service games. It's an ongoing debate, not debate around how they're delivered, but debate around, you know, different aspects of them. Dan adores live service games. It's his favorite thing.
Mm-hmm. Hitman 3 is a live service game.
It is.
That's true. We've had that debate. Hitman 3.
It's a live service game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever.
So is Halo and Diablo.
Yeah,
I think everybody here has
it's
live
fine.
service.
You can call it whatever you want. I mean, it's this not in the, you know, when people think live service, they don't go, oh,
yeah,
that's
no,
not
totally.
Totally,
Dan, you're 100% right. If you define live service as only the ones you don't like, it's terrible, really bad genre.
No, I'm not saying the ones you don't like, you dumb baby.
Yeah,
what I'm saying is yes, and it's
just
core.
Just define it in a way that suits you, and I agree.
You just fight with the people on the bottom, Travis. Is that
must be it? Yes, I agree. It's live service. I'm just saying it's live service.
Yeah, it's one of the good ones because it doesn't, you know.
I actually love that phrase. I didn't know other people used it. I describe live service light.
Thank you.
I actually describe like I've historically described Halo 5 as like a live service light game.
It's probably fair.
Diablo 3 is live service light, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, continual content updates, right? But anyway, if you didn't tell, Tyler, this is an ongoing bit between these guys here on live service. But we've talked a lot about live service, and I think that you working on Halo Infinite, Rocket Arena, and now Apex Legends, of course, you know, obviously you can speak to that with a little more kind of knowledge and insight than we can. But before we get there, I like to go back and talk about kind of what got you into this to begin with, right? So like how long you've been kind of in the game development space and how you kind of got down that road. We were talking a little bit before the show, but I think it's interesting, you know, for the audience to kind of understand that path, if you don't mind.
Yeah, totally. I can talk a little bit about it. First, I'll say luck. Luck. Anyone who tells you that anyone got into games without anything other than luck being like the number one driver, I think they're probably wrong. I think that's you can look and see all the things that you've done to get where you're going, but at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to luck. But so I would say that's the biggest thing. But essentially, like I've just been a long time Halo player. and I essentially spent my high school years and college years just traveling around and going to Halo events, competing, going to local LANs, traveling. I grew up in Georgia, so I'd go to Georgia-based LANs. We would drive to like Indiana to go LAN for a weekend. And I mean, this is just how, I grew up. And so I met a lot of folks, was really involved with the MLG community, and was extremely active on the forums. I think I actually had like some of the highest rep on this forum, top 3 for a while, which was pretty nerdy, but I built a lot of connections and maintained those relationships for a long time, which sort of helped me increase my luck. And eventually, just over time, I ended up joining the Army, and I got out of the Army after like 4 years, and I went to school for computer science. I wanted to work in like aerospace engineering or something. Okay. But I essentially, through luck, got a job offer at 343 Industries working on Halo 5, and dropped out of college and moved from Atlanta to Seattle, and I've essentially been up here ever since, and stayed in games. I essentially was able to leverage essentially some non-gaming sector, professional skills, and then sort of transition into a gaming equivalent, and then sort of able to take my own personal passion for Halo and game development and sort of the player experience to then drive and develop, new skills to get, into a more gaming specific position. So I started in sort of IT. I worked at 343 as building servers, infrastructure, like managing like actual hardware, and doing general, like, software and hardware support internally, not in the sense of like, someone's Windows machine is messed up, but it's more, complicated tool chain workflows for like, oh, my Perforce workspace is messed up, where they're syncing the game code. And so I was able to sort of just pick up skills there, and I transitioned into sort of like a build sort of admin, where I'd write infrastructure health reports every day and send them to various teams about, like the nightly builds and all of this stuff. And was able to make a lot of really great relationships and get to know folks there. And that just sort of snowballed. A few folks eventually left 343 after the launch of Halo 5 and started a new studio, and we're like, hey, we have this need. It's not what you've really done before. It's kind of there. And would you like to try a new discipline, which was build engineering, which is what I do now. I'm a software engineer that works in build and release, and spent 4 years essentially just getting to learn anything and everything while working on a game called Rocket Arena. And and that essentially just was able to propel me and put me in a position to jump to Apex Legends, 2.5 years ago. So I think that a lot of it was really just my love for Halo, really, and competing and the community that I built around it. I mean, by the time that I was working in Halo, there were friends and folks that were either involved with the game, like on the pro team. I knew a bunch of those folks, like Strong Side, Neighbor, and Gostiame, who that connection even, is tied to me coming to Apex Legends. He was the one that like Eric Hewitt was working at EA at the time. He was the one that referred me to the Apex job I applied to. But so really Halo has just been core to, I think, my whole career, really. I mean, it's been essentially my whole family. Like, I have a small family growing up, but those were really my friends. And my whole network, and then they're now like really just even the competitive Halo folks, they're running the whole gaming industry. They're all over the place. Pro Halo players are working at High Res, and what's the game, Rogue, the name not Rogue Squadron, is the Star Wars game. Man, there's a third-person shooter. It's like a third-person shooter that High Res makes. That was like a design director's like an ex-professional Halo player.
I know what you mean.
I feel terrible. I can't remember the name. And so that was a lot of it. So Halo, I think, was really what got me into games. Games was never something that I had really ever pictured as being possible for me, to be honest.
Rogue Company.
Rogue Company. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So essentially, long story short, it was just Halo. I really started working professionally in games in 2015. And have been doing it since. I know you. Yeah, I don't want to go too deep in there. But
no, you're good, man. And sorry, I said Halo Infinite again. It's on my mind. Halo 5. So when I introduced, so apologies, but no, that's amazing. I think that I've talked to quite a few devs now around kind of their journey to the gaming industry, and a lot of these stories sound really similar. It's like you love games, you play games, you meet people, and it's really those connections that somehow work into, getting your foot in the door and then just kind of evolving from there. It sounds very much an industry, and I know Travis has talked about this a lot too, is there an industry where it's really about who you know and those connections that you make. It's a tight-knit kind of community in that regard. It feels like, anyway, from the outside looking in and conversations I've had.
Absolutely. Even after a few years of working in the industry, but I got lucky to be at a place like 343 working on a game at this, of the scope and scale of Halo. And, those folks are now, that worked on Halo 5. Most of them are either like engineering leads at Riot and service leads on TFT, and they're running whole studios and stuff. And, it's those connections are invaluable to your next step. Pretty much every job I've ever gotten was like a word of mouth referral from someone I knew in the industry.
That's awesome. So I would say, and guys, feel free to jump in here. I've kind of got some things I wanted to talk about, but if anything kind of, jumps into your head here for Tyler, let me know. But I wanted to talk about, like, one of the big things that we see a lot is, a lot of misconceptions around how quick it is to deliver things in games today, right? What are the struggles with AAA development, right? Like, why do games take so long to develop from a AAA perspective, right? Several years in some cases for big budget projects. And like, I think the complexities around game development now versus, 5, 10, 20 years ago for sure, I think are always interesting. So for someone who's worked on games like Halo 5, massive game, Apex Legends, massive game, can you kind of talk just a little bit about that? Like the complexity of actually releasing that game on multiple platforms, consoles, PC, cross-play, all those things that are kind of expected of a modern game today in a AAA space, like the challenges around that and why it can take so long, seemingly from the outside looking in, take so long for things to happen.
Yeah. An example I like to use, and I've used when talking about this online a lot, and it's an easy example for me, is Halo. You look at the games of like Halo 3, Halo 2 back in the day as like an Xbox game, and people commonly talk about these features that they really miss from those games, like lobbies with party chat and proximity chat and stuff like this. And, in a lot of ways, people are like, these are solved problems, right? We had it in 2007. Why don't we have it now? And, a lot of people just, and rightfully so, I don't blame, any player of games for not necessarily understanding this, because it's impossible really to, unless you want to know and you go looking for the answers. But, back then, there's a big difference between making a game that, interact specifically with services that are on a specific platform, say for example Xbox Live, Xbox Voice Chat, and etc., and are able to then leverage them in game and their in-game features. That makes it really easy to implement something like a lobby party chat, where there's this one sort of common service that you can sort of build upon or leverage, right, for some of the work. But suddenly, if, say, for example, that same game is on another platform, that option's no longer on the table. You can't just use, an Xbox Live voice service to get your party chat. You need to now build something that is compatible between whatever services are available that you want to leverage, or not at all, right? Like, or use your own entire solution. And the more, I think, variables that you add, the more sort of conflicts and complexities that you get, especially once you start, distributing, like, the shape of your game. That's a phrase that I like to use a lot, like, definitely matters too. Modern games are shaped very differently than back then, but yeah, like a game that's on Xbox, or a single platform is generally can lean really heavily on whatever strengths or tools are provided to them. But as you increase the number of platforms, you have to sort of create buffers in between all of these. And that really drives a lot of the difficulty, as well as just sort of the multiplayer nature of games too. So there's so many different places I could go, but I think it's, the big drivers are sort of like the platforms, multi-platform, multiplayer online games, are really difficult to make because they have to be compatible with, you have this giant dependency matrix of all the platforms it needs to be compatible with. And you need not only just data servers for your clients to like gather information from, but also maybe dedicated servers for your players to like host their actual matches on. And all of these things have to work in unison. and have to iteratively move forward as a unit. And the larger that unit gets, the more complex and complicated it becomes. And then the larger your audience is, the more complicated and risky that becomes because of the impact, the visibility, perception, right? Between the additional complexity of actually making the games themselves, but there's also, the entirety of content creation and this whole industry around talking about games and literally playing games for 40 hours a week, games that weren't designed to be, necessarily a 40 like a full-time job. That also exacerbates things because, the perceived impact or severity of any given issue can be, drastically inflated or exacerbated publicly in a way that almost forces you to do things too. So I think it's just like a lot of different factors coming together, increase the sort of risk and pressure of shipping a game, but also they really are like monolithic stacks of technology. I mean, you look at an Xbox exclusive from 10 years ago, the height of golden age of FPS gaming, right? Like Call of Duty 4 and Halo 3, right? And you look at a modern game like, say, Fortnite or something, and it's literally on 9 times as many platforms, or it's absurd. And so I think that's the big part.
Just kind of new.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a whole intermediate layer that is not simple either, right? Like, so I think it's so many different factors. Obviously, we can talk about any of them in details if y'all are interested. But
and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would trickle down to everything in that game development, right? So like even testing new builds, right, is 10 times more complicated because you're testing all the permutations, I should say, of what could happen, right, when a single line of code is changed for something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unless there are obviously, I could go into a million different ways, and every game is going to have different edge cases and whatnot. But yeah, like essentially, especially for a multiplayer game, you want to keep everything sort of in parity. You really don't want, say you're making a game on PlayStation and Xbox, and PlayStation moving ahead of Xbox, especially if they have like common, tech dependencies, right? Now I've got a server that's connecting to multiple different PlayStation builds, and it makes things harder. You want everything sort of to like move forward together iteratively, make sure your players are having consistent and the best experience possible. And yeah, I mean, that means for any given change for an appropriate test pass, you now have 9 times as much actual data, maybe, or say as 9 platforms. But in this case, say you have an additional platform, that's not just an additional build. You need to get to a bunch of QA testers or devs or just players, etc., to test, but that's all the test passes you need to run on it as well. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, the footprint of your game becomes gigantic over time, and therefore, like, every little change that you make, even though in a vacuum may seem small, the range of implications is humongous.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good explanation as to why we see people say like, well, why can't you just add this coding here to this? And it's like, well, because that little change actually has to be built and tested against, 50 different things.
And maybe gives people more context. So what I specifically do in build engineering is largely just delivering content to players, right? So, my job is I write code that automates and essentially builds all the game's dependencies and packages them together, gets them to either internal devs and for dev environments, and then also to first parties, right? So a lot of my expertise is working with, the different platforms like Sony, Xbox, Steam, Origin, et cetera, and understanding sort of like how all their tech works, how to integrate their SDKs and ship projects on their platforms. They all patch differently. How Steam patches is vastly different than even how Origin or PlayStation, et cetera. And
just sounds like operations, basically, right? Like you're
really, yeah.
Basically.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, we not only just ship the game, but enable the development of whatever game we're supporting too, right?
So it sounds like you've worked on at least 3 live service teams, right? I would consider Halo 5 pretty live service.
Correct, yeah.
So a question I've had is, what do you guys consider to be success in live service space? Because we've seen this phenomenon where there's the ultra successes like Fortnite, where it'll run for years, it'll have 50 seasons, and that's their success. Is like
Apex Legends would be a good example there.
Apex Legends is another one. They enjoy infinite success, and then you have other ones where like Knockout City, where I think they did like 12 or so seasons, something like that. It was not an insignificant number.
3 years they ran for, something
it was like 3 years. Right? 3 years. I think it was less than that. I think it was like 2 years of seasons. But but they, their development studio, I imagine, probably felt like that was success, since I believe Velen Studios at the time only had like 30 employees or something like that. They were like a pretty small team, and they had a good run, and I think were more successful than I think a lot of people thought they were going to be. But people still look at that game and go, oh, they failed because they stopped doing seasons, right? They eventually stopped. And I feel like the paradigm has become, if you don't run forever, you're a failed game, which is sort of new in the gaming space, right? It used to be you could sell really well for a couple months, and then people would stop buying your game, but you were still considered successful. So I'm wondering, in your experience, what is the teams you worked on, what have they been looking at internally as like, well, this is the metric for success, this is how long we need to run to be successful, or anything like that? Any insight you've got would be interesting to me.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if I'm necessarily privy to some of those discussions, I guess, like, my current role, of course, but I think that like, it definitely depends on, the studio and sort of your position. First, of course, right? Like if you're a small, scrappy studio shipping your first game, success might just be making a wave. But in my opinion, the idea of like shipping a game that, people, may get their eyes on, may play, may build an opinion of, if I treat it sort of like throwing spaghetti or you're just throwing something against the wall and seeing if it sticks, I sort of treat that like as an extension of sort of like internal development, maybe in the past, where you try an idea, you take it, forward as far as you can. It maybe isn't like the idea of a prototype, and maybe it's fun, maybe you feel like it's going somewhere, maybe it's not. I think live service games are sort of the same, is like really whether it's fun or not and whether people pick it up and it's successful is largely out of your control. In my opinion, you can make a really great game and has all, like, I'll use an example. Rocket Arena is a game I worked on previously. Is this EA game. It was a multiplayer shooter. I spent 4 years working on it, and I did, it was a really small team. There's like 30 to 50 people. And
perfect question. That's exactly what Luke from XCP was asking around that, like along those exact lines, Tyler. Like it's something like Rocket Arena success versus something like Apex. How does that catch on?
Sorry, I missed the question. Oh, good. Very play.
It's exactly what you were just about to speak to.
Yeah, I think it comes to, so many different things. It's like the state of gaming at the moment. Like, what are people playing and what are they excited about right now? What other things are upcoming and releasing? Were you ahead of or behind the trends? All these things are really.
There's an interesting fad component, right? Because
absolutely.
The games can't be made at the same pace as fads rise and fall, which I think is kind of an interesting element, because some games you look at them and you go, well, this is a weird game to put out like now in this economy. But they take so long to make. It's kind of no wonder why sometimes we see a little bit of like volatility and ups and downs and things coming back around to then be popular again. Like I remember when Battlefield like games were like the most popular game type ever. It was like, oh yeah, this is the future of gaming. Everything's going to be 400 players, and then it kind of fell off, and now we're kind of seeing it come back with this indie BattleBit game. So it's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, you not only have to like hit the mark like on your actual like execution and delivery of the game, but players have to want something new, right? They have to be receptive to like trying something new. Not only does it have to be good and hook them, they have to, actually want to play it. If everyone's enamored with Elden Ring or whatever, they're never going to pay attention, right? Like you're just not going to be able to make a splash. So I think that the success, it's maybe you will later on down the line, maybe you'll find a niche market, but I think it's really just is this dynamic responsive thing that you have to do, which is like find where your niche is right now. To try and find success. Maybe and maybe if you don't, like, you can, like, see, it's weird because, you know, we're in a state where there's also like the opinion, like there's a viewership economy in a way where it's like, you know, Twitch can decide whether your game's dead or not at their whim. You know, like just saying that a game is dead can lead to that in reality, because who wants to play, you know, if most games still, I think, get picked up by new players via word of mouth, via friends, people in their lives that they know and trust, they're recommending things, and they see it on TV and that reaffirms, or wherever, right? But when you see like a thing is dead everywhere and people are just in Twitch chat, like, this game sucks, game's dead on arrival, whatever, a lot of players aren't even going to give it a chance. And that, what you really need is for people to give it a chance. In a live service environment, I think. And so, like, for a smaller game, that's your success metric, I think, is you want to try to get people to give your game a chance. And if you're unable to do so for reasons outside of your control, like, at least try to ensure that your processes and your tools and your way of doing things can grow so that you can increase your chances next time. Like, you take the development iteration to your sort of like your, you know, game ideas in a live service environment, in that, you know, if this doesn't hit well, sure, but like, take those systems and build on it and build better next time. I look at Rocket Arena. I think Rocket Arena was a stellar game. To be honest, there's so many features in that game that players ask for out of like their bigger games that aren't.
It was super fun.
Aren't there.
Yeah.
But it just, for lots of reasons, it, you know, may have fell short or whatever, but the systems behind the game were really modern and really well built. And so I think that's, like, even for that studio, and though I'm not there anymore and I don't know what's going on, I have no doubt that whatever, you know, Final Strike Games makes next will have another good chance of success, because they built really good tools and processes. The tech behind the game is probably years ahead of a lot of games that are out there today. And this game came out in 2020. And, you know, just being able to take another chance, it's sort of like the luck I said earlier about getting in the gaming industry. It's all luck, but you can maximize your, I guess, opportunities to roll the dice. And if you build a tech stack and processes and a team that's really effective at iterating, which is what you want to do in game development anyways, if you're able to get a game out there quickly, learn from it, implement that feedback, iterate, even if your game doesn't hit for reasons outside your control, you just try again. And if your processes are good, your team's good, and you learn from, you know, your past mistake, like, I think it can still be a success even if players don't view it that way. So I think the metrics will be different for every team. You know, for a big game like Apex Legends, you know, success will be obviously defined differently. You know, for a game with go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it almost seems like, because you were talking about how giving the game a chance is like a big part of whether you succeed or fail. And I've heard that from other developers, and definitely not just live service developers, because especially if you're making like a small indie game or something, like you kind of just have to get lucky. It has to catch on, like people going viral or whatever. And sometimes it is just a matter of luck. There's obviously ways to give yourselves advantages if you have a bigger budget or stuff like that. But sometimes, especially in the indie space, it is luck. The thing that I find unique about live service games is a lot of them do get a chance, and a lot of them do pop off, as the kids say, at the outset. They do pretty well, and then the problem becomes kind of a battle of attrition to keep players' attention before they fall off, because fads rise and fall, and keeping a fad going as long as like an Apex might, right, or at the point where it stops really feeling like a fad and is just sort of a normal part of the ecosystem, is kind of challenging to keep up with, right? Like, developers are constantly like chasing that. The players want more content as soon as they've played your game, and then they want new content as soon as they've played that. It's really hard to catch up with it. And I'm always interested in hearing like how teams organize themselves. I don't know how Respawn is organized, but you know, some teams, like take Diablo, you know, they've got 3 teams. They've got the team that works on the yearly expansions. They've got the team that works on the odd seasons, and the team that works on the even seasons. All right. And so they're constantly kind of like creating the pipeline together and separating. So I'm curious to wonder, like, how do you deal with the constant insatiable hunger of the audience and meeting their expectations And how is your team organized around building live service?
And I just to add to that, Tyler, too, to that same point is, to Travis's point, it feels like a lot of these games launch, hit that success, but then they really struggle in that ongoing delivery, right? Like they just fall flat. I mean, we saw it with Halo Infinite. We saw it with many titles. Like, why is that? I guess the question we always ask here is, from the outside looking in, you can see so many games struggle in that area, right? Like, you've launched well. Why weren't you more prepared to deliver more content more rapidly post-launch? And I guess we just don't know the answer to that question. So kind of a two-part question there. Your thoughts on it.
Yeah, totally. I think it's lots of stuff. One, I can't really speak towards, the larger like Respawn organization. I think I can speak from my experience, obviously, and that one thing I think that really helps in the case of Apex Legends is that the studio at least recognizes how important the game is to players. Obviously, got to I can get into the live service part in a moment, but I think the studio is structured in a way that is focused on long term, or from my perspective, has created an environment where long term success is really personally viable. Live service iteration is really fast. Development is very hard, and it is exhausting. I would say that I almost describe like working in live service games as personally unsustainable. It is constant. It really is. Like it never stops. By the time you finish shipping one season, you're literally transitioning to getting into the next sort of thing. And so I think that that is a new type of approach to game development, this sort of like endurance or long distance race kind of feel, right? Where it's like, okay, we have to like sort of pace ourselves for the long term, because you want to create a game that lasts, I'm just saying in general for big games that, are ongoing, lasts 10 years, for example. And you're never going to get that sprinting. But I think for a long time, game development has been this sort of like jog to a sprint to the finish line kind of thing. And I think that maybe some studios and different teams have yet to necessarily like respond to like structuring their approach to do things with that context. I think that a lot of games, what ends up happening is you see teams sprinting to the finish line, and they get to the finish line and they're exhausted. But that's when the work starts in live service. That's not like the finish line in the same way that developing a game was before. That's your first iteration pass, really. And so I think that what may be happening with lots of teams is that fatigue builds, especially under situations like, I don't want to like undershot or overlook like just the environment for which games that we're playing now have been made too. It's in the context of COVID and a global pandemic too, right? And economic instability. Everyone's exhausted already. We all are. And you add on top of that this sort of like need to deliver. People do treat the games like it's life and death. And I was in the military and I work in games now, and it's not life and death. We have to remind ourselves all the time that we're making games, like we're doing this for fun. But what'll happen is I think teams get exhausted, folks get burnt out, and unless you're really, really prioritizing your team's health over the long term and your processes that guarantee or sort of prioritize long-term success, like you're at a disadvantage already. And I think that's a lesson that no one's teaching, right? Because people are just learning it now, right? Live service is so young that there's such a small number of people who have real experience like supporting a live service game for multiple years. Right. There's like such a small number of people, and a lot of people who have done it, I think probably have moved on, because it is for some people, like it's in not, unless you're in the right environment, it can be unsustainable. So I think that, a lot of it is recognizing that, you have to be able to respond quickly. Even if players are really, really loving your game, anything that you do for 40 hours a week, week after week, you're going to be able to spot the problems, the things that annoy you. And so I think that no matter how good your game is, people are going to play it to a point that they get frustrated by something. And then the more the people around them and the people they speak with are talking about and sharing and echoing these feelings, the bigger of a problem it's going to feel like. And so after launch, there's this balance of not only do you have to actually improve things and fix things, but you just have to reassure players and your player base that you care about their experience and that you're doing something. I think that in and of itself is a whole complicated topic, but yeah, it's if players don't feel like things are going to get better, like they're not going to keep playing your game. Right. And so I think that's a big thing, is that you have to be quick. You have to have velocity in fixing like the really impactful issues. And if those issues are systemic and fundamental to like the game's technology and can't be fixed, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster, I think. So I think that's a lot of it, is just making sure that, the priorities of the issues that your players have flagged that you haven't resolved or you haven't responded to yet, like you have to find a way to communicate to them that you are, and then you have to follow up on that. You can't just communicate and say we're on it and then spend 6 months of silence afterwards. You have to take accountability, I think. And I'm not speaking of anyone specific, of course. I'm just saying in general, like you have, I think that's key, and it's really hard, man. Like, like working on a game for, multiple years and just like being like nose to the grindstone kind of feel, and then being like, you ship it and you're like, yeah. Oh wait, actually, this is when the hard work starts. I think that's just a lot of it, is that the gaming industry is not structured that way, right? Like it's very contractor heavy, and there's this like transient flow and like ebb and flow to studio size based off of like ship date, and that's just not going to work in live service. You have to have like a core team who understand the game, the tech, the processes, right, and the issues, or else you're never going to have that long-term success. And I just don't think studios have really like structured themselves, maybe not in my experience, or at least from what I understand, around achieving that. I think that's a lot of it. Yeah, it's a fundamental change to. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry, Tyler. I was going to say, that's where I was going. Is it seems like a change to something that has been a long-term kind of standard in the industry. Games have been developed in X way, and now with live service delivery, they're shifting to Y way. But it feels like a slow turn, maybe for some studios, and they're not extremely well prepared. It also feels like this may be an issue that seems almost unique to the gaming industry. I was thinking about other kind of media as you were describing that problem, and it's not like you spend 3 years developing a movie and you release your movie and then fans are like, well, that's it, right? You're not going back and you're not updating your movie post-release.
Justice League.
Fair.
Wow.
The first live service movie, maybe.
Didn't Return of the Spider-Verse get like audio updates?
It did.
Yeah. Audio patch.
Movies
are in trouble.
Get updates, and sometimes they get like refreshes when they get released on like Blu-ray.
Sure, but it's not the same. But the point being is
that
sequels. But I guess
live service Indiana Jones.
Harrison Ford and AI. But I think between the amount of people working on it, the time investment and money investment, and then supporting that for years post-release is definitely kind of a unique struggle that seems like studios are still trying to figure out how to overcome that, and the best processes to go along with that.
Yeah, true. It's a problem. It's a problem that snowballs too. Like, say for example, I think of when I joined Respawn. Apex is a legacy engine or code base, and it was already established game when I joined, and it took me probably, even though I know now that at the time I really knew my stuff. Like I as the only person in my discipline on Rocket Arena, I shipped the game as like the only build engineer. I did all the servers and the multiplayer stuff, and so we shipped on Origin, and so I was already familiar with a lot of EA's tech, and so I joined. But it took me 18 months before I really felt confident, because game dev is hard, tech is hard, and learning all of the different intricacies or edge cases or limitations of any set of tools and how to do things well is going to take any professional like time. So there's gaming is in a black box in a way that not everything really is. I mean, I guess you don't get insight into how Facebook codes their platform, but still, like, there's so much of this like studio knowledge and whatnot that it takes a lot of time to ramp even knowledgeable devs up so that when you lose folks for any reason, say they're burnt out or say they're just ready to move on to another project or whatever reason, they're getting harassed, like replacing that is going to take a long time. Not only do you have to find a person who has all the skill sets, like hard and soft skills and is a good fit for the actual role, but then they have to like get up to speed. They have to, you know, all that stuff. And it takes time, and you're looking at like a year lag time to replace an experienced dev. And so, yeah, if you're not thinking about that ahead of time or have a retention plan to ensure that you're not losing folks, or you make it easier to onboard people, like a game can just slowly become more and more difficult to maintain or ship. And yeah, so anyways, I'm just rambling now, but
no, you're fine. I was going to say, which is also the problem I've heard about contracted employees, right? Because like once that contract is up, and then trying to replace them, as you just described, with someone that can pick up the knowledge and pick up the pieces of what that contractor had been working on for 12, 18, 24 months, sounds like it, you know, be an extreme struggle.
Think about like all of your skills. Yeah, all of your skills transient, right? When you have a bunch of contractors, you know, like imagine thinking about like your experience is just something that floats out the building.
Yeah,
like, gone forever.
It's crazy.
Like what?
Sorry, 343.
Stop.
It's I mean, it's an issue all over the place. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have been critical, I think, of contracting policies in general. I would say that you know, it sucks. A lot of my colleagues and stuff I know that, you know, there are friends that are even, I won't say colleagues like as in Respawn, but in the industry that are, you know, extremely talented professionals. You know, the contracting culture just gives them this lack of stability in their life that is just insane to me. It's absolutely absurd knowing how many, like if you met these devs on the street and you were like, oh my God, you worked on all of those games and you don't have health insurance. It's actually crazy. These people like living in like near austerity just so they can, you know, make the games that we all love.
As a games industry contractor myself, I would like to say, you know, contract work gets a bad rep sometimes because it is for me it's great, and I choose to be a contractor because I get to make as much money as I'm willing to work for. But when you're working on a project that is as long-term and as involved as making a video game, I do not think it makes any sense. I can be a contractor because I write one review or one article or do one report and then it's done, right? It takes like a week. But making a video game is what I would call a long-term commitment. And if you're contracting for that and all that knowledge base and like legacy kind of understanding of like the engine and the story and all that other stuff, I think contract work is like a terrible idea. So yeah, I'm with you there, man.
It's funny seeing the, you know, the in juxtaposition to contracting in general tech, right? I don't know what it's like now, but I did contracting prior to working in the games for like DoD and stuff. The common, I guess, accepted thing there was that like generally you asked for 1.5 times your like hourly rate as if it was a full-time job. You know, this is how I approached it when I was contracting, and it's the exact opposite for games. It's like you're making half as much. So it's so absurd because like contracting makes sense externally. You lack stability, but you get this upfront sort of benefit and you can work as much as you want. But, you know, contracting in games, you're working 50, 60 hours a week and you're wringing you like a wet rag, you know, for half as much as you know, even the contract you're under says you're worth, right? Because there's a contracting agency who's accepting the actual full payment of that contract, and then they're negotiating with the dev for how much profit they pull off of it, right? So it's like it's just absurd.
That's crazy.
That's nuts.
Ridiculous.
So wait, where's the reward come in? Because everything you have described so far, I don't even know why live service games exist at this point. Because nothing sounds good in the development part. You know, where do you personally get that reward from what you do? I guess.
Yeah, well, so I am intimately tied to shipping Apex Legends, which is for me personally is I love live service games. I just want to say just Apex. I like live service games because I'm a multiplayer guy, and I play games socially. I like to go where my friends are, and I really don't care too much about the game. Is if I can shoot things and feel correct, I'm cool, right? If I can socialize with my friends while doing it, I'm good. You know, so like having a long-term experience where I can have those sort of friends where I can play this multiplayer experience with my friends who with low barrier to entry, they don't have to, make a huge upfront purchase to get into the game. That's big for me. It's like a core part of my socializing. And then also working on it, I think that like I see the value to both the community of these games that, we support, and I personally love them. And so just being a part of making sure that they're still a thing and having some sort of like personal agency over, the not only just the outcome of that thing, but also like ensuring that I get to represent or speak for those players and ensure that they're like, the things that they think are important are advocated for internally. That's what makes it, to me, I think, worth it. Just being a part of shipping a game as big as Apex Legends on its own is the coolest thing in the world to me. In that regard, and just like playing it, I think live services we forget, right? I look at a game like Halo 3 and COD 4, which were insanely popular when I was a teenager, but and I don't have metrics or data that I can show to back this up, but like really the scale of how many people were playing that game is nothing like today, right? Like it seems like everyone you knew was playing Halo 3 back in the day, but it's because everyone you knew was a 16-year-old. Like all the 16-year-olds
social media.
Halo.
Yeah.
And today it's not like that. Everyone's playing Apex Legends or Fortnite or whatever. Everyone's mom knows who it is. Everyone's mom's sister knows who it is, what it is. And so like I think that the value of that is really big, because I think live service is key to those games getting that big. I don't think that multiplayer games could have survived and stayed relevant as long in a different model to the point to where they could be so like Fortnite is absurd, right? Like how big it is and how like inundated with popular culture it is, right? I just don't think that merging of those two things, like popular culture and gaming, was possible without live service. It keeps the games in the news constantly, right? Like they're always talking about the updates, the newest thing. Like it just keeps it relevant and fresh in a way that we may or may not be for the better. Who knows? There's definitely like, adverse effects of that as well. But I think that being able to work on something that so many people are aware of and have played or can recognize is something that is, for me, has only been capable via live service, and that makes it have value, I think. And also like looking at games like BattleRight, there's like a possibility for success in a game, like a smaller game that has sort of like a monetary structure that goes directly to the dev team that wasn't possible in the past, right? Like say you have a small team, you ship an indie game like on physical disc or something like that, right? Or on Steam, and a couple people play it. You might make some money, you might make the development costs back. But if you can get your game on multiple platforms and players can get in your game, find the fun, and then they'll be able to necessarily like, and I know microtransactions are a bad thing for lots of folks. I'm not necessarily like hyping them up, but for a dev team, like you can find a level of success that wasn't possible before too. And I think that's good. Small, agile teams finding success and being able to scale up what they do and make bigger, better games. I think that's a good thing. So, I don't know. That's where I find the value of live service. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I ramble a lot, so.
That's all right, man. It was just so, it was always, everything was just so like, man, this is really hard. This is, like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. So that's good. I'm glad that there is something like that for you guys and people in your industry. So
yeah, and for what it's worth, I want to make sure it comes across like too. Like I love my job, what I do like right now, and it feels sustainable. I think live service on its own, if not done right, it'll hurt you. Like on Rocket Arena, I really burnt myself out. I put myself in the hospital, and I didn't really, it was pretty bad. And it's really easy to do like in a live service environment because everything feels critical. It feels, like people make, and maybe it is, but it's really hard people who make games really care about gamers, right? Like that's what they are. They've shaped their whole life around that thing. And so it's really hard not to take feedback and criticism and whatnot and make it feel like the most important thing in the world. And it's really easy to burn yourself out as a result.
I think we've heard similar stories from a lot of devs who've spoken out about that kind of stuff too, Tyler. It's like their love and passion for gaming and their entire kind of social structure being around gamers as they grew up is a big reason why they do it, you know. And the struggles that come along with that seem kind of crazy when there is an industry that's making that's as big and financially successful as it has been. You know, I think there's obviously work to be done in that space to translate those successes down to the developers who make these games that we all love so much. So, all right, let's. I got super chats to get to, some additional questions there, but I want to put you on the spot, Tyler. Kind of give us a little break on you know, some of the more serious stuff. So, just some rapid fire questions for you on gaming history, things you like. Nothing crazy. I just like to hear it. So, first things first. Your favorite game of all time?
Single player, multiplayer.
Travis just left the building.
Halo 2.
Travis is dead. Got it.
Why would Travis be opposed to asking this question? Let me hear your ridiculous
rapid fire
question.
I say
real
single player.
Quick. What's the go through every game in history and tell me your favorite?
Kind of
just
stuff.
really quickly.
Single player, Final Fantasy VI. Multiplayer, Halo 2.
See, Travis,
Easy.
it's not hard. It's not hard.
It's crazy.
You just name the game you love. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VI is a good choice.
It is a good choice. And Halo 2, I mean, just Tyler's a permanent.
I think he might break under cross-examination. That's all.
I think Tyler is a permanent guest on the show now with Final Fantasy VI and Halo 2 as his answers, because it doesn't get much better than that, to be honest.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most overrated game of all time?
Holy cow. That's
Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And he would remain on this show.
That would be high on my list.
Come on, 10 is more overrated.
I'll say Final Fantasy VII and Halo 3.
Whoa! All right, he's permanently invited now. He's permanently invited on the show. There couldn't have been a better answer in my book.
Don't get me wrong. I love Halo 3.
You don't like Bloom? You don't like Bloom? Come on, Tyler. It's the best.
Dude, the 70 FOV is timeless. I mean, why would you not want to always play?
I love walking through molasses. Like, that's just what it feels like running your Spartans.
Oh my God, that's classic. I mean, you threw me so off with that answer. I didn't expect that. That now, like, I'm trying to figure out where to go with this.
It's weird. Like, I'd throw Halo 3 in my like top 10 games of all time, but also I think that, and rightfully so, for a lot of people, it is the Fortnite of a generation, and I understand that.
Very true.
I get why you invited Tyler on the show now.
Yeah,
by the way.
Yeah, I'm very happy right now.
He's just a sycophant. I get it.
What was I going to say? What's your favorite kind of platform of all time? What's the one you had the most memories with?
Platformer?
Yeah, console.
Oh, oddly enough, I'm going to say PlayStation. Even though Halo is core to like everything, PlayStation was my first console and the one I play the most today.
PlayStation 1?
Yes.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
That one didn't have a number, Travis.
Yeah, I know. I had a PlayStation, and not the actual PlayStation 1, because there was a PlayStation 1 console.
We didn't
There
call
was
it
the
World
little
War I
mini
either.
one. Yeah.
We didn't call it World War 1?
We didn't at the time.
Yeah.
Were you alive during World War 1? Is that what I'm learning? Bro,
I'm seasoned, but not that seasoned.
did you kill the Archduke? What am I learning about you these days? This is crazy. He said we didn't call it World War 1.
As
Like
a
he was
people.
were you using the royal we to describe humanity? Was it what?
Yes.
Man.
Like
Whew.
where no man has gone before.
Okay. Well, it's very
What's the we called it World War. That's great. What's the first game you played? Like, what's the first game you remember playing as a kid?
I'm probably going to embarrass myself by saying I don't know which one it was, whether it was Super Mario Bros. 2 or 3, but it was on the NES, NES, one of the Mario games. It was at my like grandma's house in her attic when I was like 5 or 6. Not her attic or her upstairs game room. She had this, and I just that was the first time I ever played a game. Yeah.
That's awesome. Were you like fascinated right away?
Oh, absolutely. Like I grew up, I didn't have access to games and stuff as a kid, really. Like I got a PlayStation 1 when I was like 7 for Christmas, but it was like my Christmas gift for 3 years. My parents were like, we're making a deal. But like up until that point, I was just like this little fiend, like sort of like you see kids like these days. Like after I played that, I was just like, you got games in your phone? Except for like a console upstairs. Like, you got a game console I can play? Every house I went to.
Yeah, no doubt. And then what's the game you play most nowadays?
Apex Legends.
Apex, I figured, would be the standard answer. Let's say outside of Apex.
That's really hard to answer. This is pretty much nothing else.
I'm still stuck on World War
Can
I.
I say?
I don't know about you guys.
Can I say Aim Lab? Can I say that?
You
It
can
sounds
say
really
whatever
silly.
you want.
Yeah, there's this game on Steam that I play called Aim Lab that just helps you with like aiming with a mouse. I play that probably almost as much as Apex Legends. I play it as just like a fun, like to wake my brain up. I just like shoot, like click on targets.
Wow, I hadn't heard of that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's got a bunch of different exercises. It helps you like first-person shooter games. It's actually really cool. You can select your game and put your sensitivity input, and it like replicates the feel of specific games like Valorant, Apex, etc.
Damn, that's cool. All right. Okay, let's get to some super chats. Travis, you got to move on from World War I, man.
I can't, man. I can't deal with World War One.
Yeah, Travis can't do rapid fire questions. We know this from experience. He
true.
Like,
you just need to have criteria, specific criteria to.
We did. Tyler, I once asked Travis. I said, we're gonna like design our perfect game, right? Like, just in your perfect world, what would your perfect game be? Travis spent 15 minutes rambling about nonsensical things because he couldn't answer the question.
Why he couldn't answer?
He did die on camera. It was fun.
He did. Yeah, it was interesting.
I don't remember it that way, but that's not what we called it.
Our audience does.
That's not what we called it back in the day. Okay,
that's true. We have that. Yeah, we have the recording.
So do I have to pitch my perfect game now?
Go for it.
Can I skip that question? Oh no.
Oh, you don't have to.
The answer was no.
Yeah,
that's a really long question.
I don't know if the answer is.
You don't know? Okay. Yeah. You can just.
I was hoping there wasn't the expectation. I was like, oh god, should I be
just say Apex Legends again, and you're good.
Yeah, Apex could be your default.
Yes, we just go with that.
Doing that, I would probably get harassed on the internet so much.
There's no
let's shout out some.
It doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah.
Hoeg can, he can help you deal with that. He's used to it.
Apparently, I'm the only one who can have a wrong answer on that question.
Yes.
Well,
because your answer was so wrong. It was next level wrong. So anyway, we're gonna move on. Shout out to a couple new channel members while I've been talking to Sally Dragon and I had to look at the name, Banana Fana Fofarin on Hoeg's channel. Thank you for becoming a channel member over there. Fatboy Horror, thank you for continuing your membership on the Season Gaming side. Appreciate you. Google Man came in before we started the show. I'm only now getting to the super chat with his random super chat. Dan, you want to hit these?
Yeah. There we go. Google Man, I love you, man. All right. I'd like to once again recommend the eye-opening miniseries Devs with Nick Offerman. Love Nick Offerman. The guy from Axe Cop. Also tried
what he's best known for. Axe Cop.
Yeah, Axe Cop. Tastes good.
That's sweat.
I gotta
not
tell
sweet.
you,
What? What's Kari? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I gotta
not
tell
sweet.
You, Devs, you want to talk about things that go off the rails?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I've never heard of the show.
What the hell is Kari sweat?
Insane.
Have y'all watched Mythic Quest at all?
A little bit.
I've
heard good things.
It's not all like not everything that they represent about game development is like realistic, like especially like their QA stuff and for
sure.
But the jokes that they make and whatnot, like it is actually so well written. I'm sure you know Unishek. Him and I watched that together and we loved that show. We laughed so much at some of the jokes, especially like the community ones.
Nice.
Like the community manager and stuff. They do it so well. It's really funny.
Okay. Yes. I started it, but I'm only a few episodes in.
Yeah. As an aside, they have these like spin-off episodes that are in the show in the first and second season that are just like totally different cast, tells a different story. Fantastic. They're like little one-shots. They're some of the best TV I've seen in recent years.
Which show?
Mythic Quest.
Oh
yeah,
it's on Apple.
Yeah. I love Mythic Quest, man.
It's really good, actually.
I haven't seen there's a new season just came out too, I think. Not too long ago.
Yeah. Googleman, thank you. Gecko, we might have touched on some of these while we were talking, so we can just kind of, yeah.
Yeah, Gecko Gamer, thank you very much. There is a lot of talk about the ever-increasing complexity. At the same time, a lot of game development has become more accessible. Has the latter contributed to the former by making lower-level development harder?
So if I think what they're asking is like, I would say that yeah, like the increasing complexity of game dev makes it hard in some cases, or even like rare cases. But I do think also like things like Unreal Engine, for example, really lower the floor for folks getting out there and creating high fidelity games. So I would say that while games have gotten harder to make at AAA, especially in the multiplayer scope and scale, overall games have gotten easier to make in general. Like, any one of us could pull an engine off, download an engine or install it online and make a game if we wanted right now. And now we couldn't necessarily ship it to someone or necessarily make a good game. But I do think that if you want to get together a studio and gather a couple experienced devs, especially using like a unified or common like tool like Unreal Engine or something, and make something that looks AAA, like that's way easier for sure. Or taking a small competent team and making something that is on par with a AAA game. Yeah, that's definitely within the realm of possibility. I think it also contributes to some of the discourse around AAA and indie games these days anyways, is that like folks look at something and they're like, oh, like a dev team of 4 people made this. How come 100 people can't make something, right. Like profoundly better? And it's, well, like the complexity comes from hundreds of people working together on this single thing, right? Like a smaller number of team is agile and easier and capable of things in more ways, right? Like small teams are really effective, but
you can do things that aren't scalable.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that, yeah, it's a complex topic because both are true for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Gecko, thank you. Don Lionheart back in the house.
Don with the $5 super chat. Hi, friends. Love seeing interviews on here. Keep up the great work. P.S. There's a lot of Tyler Owenses out there when you Google the name.
Just a mediocre white dude.
Tyler
Come
Owens.
Lots of us.
Tyler Owens Respawn will get you to his LinkedIn.
Yeah, I use a really cringy username pretty much everywhere. That's my old Halo alias. The Heytred is a pretty easy way to find me, but it's really edgy and cringy. So it's from like 2005.
It can't be worse than Porsche Power. So
yeah, this is true. This is true. Yeah, that's very fair.
I'm not gonna lie, I should have, but I've really never even read it completely different in my head. So
Porsche
was it Shopper? Because that's what I call them.
People have called me. They've asked if I'm a poor shopper, and I'm like, no, I'm not a poor shopper. That's not what that is.
Well, I hope it has to do with the cars, because I am a Porsche fanatic. Nice. Literally shopping.
Yeah.
Right now.
Literally.
He's a perfect guest.
100%, Travis. 100%.
Are we best friends? Did we just become best friends?
We did. We're becoming best friends during the show. I
so
love it.
obnoxious. The guests you choose. I just.
Oh my god. All right, I'm gonna mute Travis now and leave Tyler on, so we'll have a great show. It'll be
hilarious. Oh man.
He's just aims with hair.
That's very fair. Very fair. Mr. Pompa in the house.
Oh, Pompa with the $20. Thank you very much, sir. Always enjoy Tyler on Twitter. A question I hear on live service is there's blueprints out there of successful live service games. I ask this question all the time. Why do live service games seem to struggle in the beginning?
Yeah, we touched on this a bit, so you kind of already answered this. I don't know if there's anything else we want to kind of comment on that piece.
Yeah, I really just think the large part is that, so many people are trying to get to the finish line and get that game out there that, either things outside of their control, right, or market, the economy as it is, or just not iterating fast enough and being able to resolve those big issues.
Yeah.
I don't know, we have limited time, but it's, I think it's interesting because, it's not only do you have to make good games, but you have to really be able to interpret feedback really effectively and translate that into like solutions and then get those solutions to people quick. And those are all like separate skills,
That's one of the things I was going to ask is like, I can only imagine, especially for like community managers and people trying to, Unisheck's a good example, right? Because the Halo community is nothing if not vocal and they all want different things, right? And it's like, how do you curate that type of feedback across so many different social media platforms, right, that people voice their displeasure on, and then bring that in a kind of meaningful way to a development team and prioritize what that looks like, what should get fixed, what is just people complaining that you're not going to change because it's part of the game, all those different things. I can only imagine the level of undertaking that is.
Yeah, that's why what I think, we all want the same thing, developers and players. We want the best games possible. And player feedback is so valuable. I mean, it's crucial. Like it's absolutely necessary. Like a game is it's a core part of making a game. Like the iteration cycle is, design idea, you make it, you give it to a player via playtest, get feedback, make changes. So like, I think that is game development. But the thing is that like, it's a cooperative process. Right. And so I think it's really important because players can improve the impact they have on a game by improving the quality of their feedback. It provides the team the ability to action on more specific things without having to interpret, to guess, because that's what a lot of it is. Sometimes somebody's like, I hate this. This is the worst thing I've ever done in my life, but they're playing it still every day. Like how do you interpret that? Right. Because they say they hate it, but they're still doing it. And so like they're speaking of something that's true, right? They're making them feel that way. But also it's not enough to make them stop playing the game. So it's like, there's a big difference between, like you hear SMART all the time. I don't remember the acronym, but like making feedback that's actionable. It's like huge, right? Like or saying how you feel is huge. Like saying this game's dog shit, excuse my language, or whatever is not super helpful, but saying like this game doesn't make me feel fulfilling. It doesn't make me feel good. It frustrates me, or I dislike this is hugely impactful and hugely helpful. Or they should have done this. That's not actionable at all. Do you know what I mean? And so like people have to interpret, go, well, what do they really want? Like, and how can we achieve like an outcome that, reduces this friction without building a time machine and changing the past.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's sounded, Travis, it's what you joke with Destiny about a lot. And it's like people will say, they hate this about Destiny, and they have 4,000 hours in it. It's like, yeah,
I mean, that's Travis himself.
That's Travis himself as well. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I do it for work, but some people do it to themselves for no particular reason. But yeah, I mean, I see that. He was talking about a dead game earlier, which I think that is Bungie's catchphrase at this point for Destiny. It's dead game. That they've been hanging their hat on that for a while. I think that might have originated with that game, honestly, because they were one of the first live services. People commenting like trash, and I think as a critic, sometimes people assume that I'm part of that crowd or part of the problem because I occasionally give games bad reviews, but there's a constructive way to do it, right? I've never called games trash or garbage or some of the things that people do, and in fact call people out when they do it because it offends me. I do not think
Folks,
any
I'm going
game
to
is
word
trash.
search on all Travis articles for trash and garbage.
Please do.
Don't get me wrong.
You'll not find them, I guarantee you.
One of my most used phrases while playing Apex Legends is "Who makes this game?" Whenever I run into an issue, I'm like, "Who makes this game?" But that's like in the moment, like and also just joking too. Like I get it, like to being like I've said that something's shit or whatever, but like I obviously would never do. It's not useful. You know what I mean? Like if I want to make this thing better.
Oh no, and
how does that contribute?
I'm just making fun with Travis. Travis, I think, primarily organizes his reviews around getting to pun headings.
That's basically it.
I mean, hold on for a second. Before you go any further, Travis's puns are
having a shtick is
like next level.
Travis's puns are fantastic.
Fantastic.
But
yeah.
They're
thought out.
Organizing things towards the puns.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
He doesn't get lazy with his puns, like a Redfall review with, took a really big bite out of that, really up the stakes. Travis, he takes some really good ones.
My favorite, if I can for a moment tell you my favorite one that I've ever done was Borderlands 3. I reviewed the expansion for it, which was a Lovecraftian horror. It had tentacle monsters, and it was also a wedding between two of the characters, Hammerlock and the other guy that got married. And my title for the review was My Tentacle Romance.
That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing.
I remember you talking about that when you did it.
That was my favorite one.
And I bet you worked a Black Parade reference in somewhere.
Obviously, I clearly know what that is.
It's to do with World War One. You wouldn't get it.
Yeah. I wasn't there for that. Sorry, I wasn't there for our regular Pengendrum here, Hoeg, hanging out in World War One, and yeah, it's good.
Never expected to.
History books exist. I wasn't there for the Pillars of the Earth either, but I know the story.
But you know what they called it?
I know.
That's like a very lived, like
War
look, you can look it up in a book, but it's called World War One there. It's like you said it like it was a first person account. You know what I mean? Like you're like, we didn't call it that. That's the difference, though.
We're gonna celebrate Independence Day. I wasn't there either.
Did they call it Independence Day when it happened, or were you not alive about it? You know what I mean?
All right, hold on. I got a couple more super chats to get to from Mr. Gecko Gamer.
Gecko
Tyler.
Gamer. Have you ever played Ultra Kill, Tyler?
I have not, unfortunately. I don't
even know what that is.
Yeah.
Is that the card shooter? Is it the shooter with it? Like I think it. Maybe it's Ultra White. I don't know. I know the name. I have not played it, unfortunately.
Never.
If it's recommended, I definitely will check it out, though.
Yeah, Gecko, don't super chat again because you've been too generous. Just go ahead, throw it in the chat, and I'll call out what is Ultra Kill. And Gecko had another super chat as well. Ultra Kill. I think of Unreal Tournament when yelling Ultra Kill.
Another question for Tyler. Do you know why gamers no longer use Xbox Live or the platform equivalent for voice chat?
I don't know, their official reasoning, but I can only assume that it's likely for supporting multi-platform games. Largely, generally, lots of games will use like an intermediate chat service or make their own chat service that hooks into these other ones. And so like that has become a really common sort of like intermediate service between different platforms. And so it sort of makes the, an Xbox equivalent obsolete. Which
ties to the Discord integration as well, right? Like more recently on the Xbox side. Anyway.
Very likely, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. By the way, Elu says Ultra Kill is a Doom style game, so I'm guessing like an old school FPS.
Sounds like the kind of stuff I'd be into. I really loved that Metal Hellsinger. If anyone played that,
yes,
it's a good one.
And that game was amazing.
Very cool. And what's the Space Marine one that just came out, or the Warhammer Bolt Gun?
Oh yeah, I was supposed to review that. Bolts.
Yeah. Bolt Gun.
Yeah. Bolt Gun. Yeah.
Yeah, I still haven't played it, but I've heard great things about it. Thank you for the super chats, guys.
Boomer shooters now.
Boomer shooters. Oh God. Midnight Jury, thank you for gifting memberships on both channels. Appreciate you all. And we just, as I said that, we got another super chat. So let me get to this one. Pampa back again.
Man, that's fast. $5 Pampa's back. Tyler, what HCS teams impress you?
Oh,
and
Lord.
who do you
Yes.
assume is the best player in
By the
HCS?
way, Tyler, Pampa is my Halo kind of partner.
Is.
We're the ones that play Halo together pretty much every day. And we play
from Twitter.
Yeah, we play. We were at Worlds together, and we play all the time. So we've been obviously talking about around HCS. I'm taking Tyler. Okay, Travis, let it go. But yeah, we were talking about this last night with HCS. There's a major going on this weekend, so yeah.
Is that the Halo Championship Series?
Yes.
Halo Championship Series, yes.
Yeah, I have not been paying attention to the Dallas. So I think it's the Optic Open that's going on right now. I haven't been able to keep up, so I know like some team changes have happened recently. Historically, I've been a big fan of Cloud9, but I do think that best player in the HCS, let's be a toss-up. It's hard not to say Lucid. Dude's just absolutely insane. But also, it's funny. So I would say like HCS teams impress me. Optics absolutely just insane. I don't know how they're doing right now, but
funny enough, late last night they got upset by the French Quadrant team by 1 kill, and they are gone. So they're not even playing today.
Not even surprised. Quadrant's sick. Yeah, I would say like I think that whole team impresses me. Best players though, like folks like Trippy, APG, Lucid are all on my list, like of like top players. Yeah.
Formal's been around. I mean, he's so cool. Thank you, Pampa. Thank you.
I have unfortunately had the pleasure of playing against Formal on LAN and Halo Reach and got absolutely stomped.
I've always we joke, one of the things we joke about a lot is like is it would be fun to get a team together and just play against Optic, right? Just you know, you'd get absolutely destroyed. You'd be lucky to even get anything at all, but it'd be fun just to experience it, just to see what it's like playing against that competition. Because it is like, people don't realize the gap in skill between those top teams in these games versus normal, even really, really good players. You don't stand a chance.
Absolutely. I think even as like somebody who considers himself pretty good and historically like Halo player, FPS player, I think, and I've been on good teams with people who are now or have been pros in the past, and just playing against a top team like that too, it's not even a matter of playing against them, it's playing against them when they're actually trying to. Because like the funny thing is like there's a huge difference between players of that caliber just casually playing the game and then actually trying because they have to against another top team. Like the way they might play against, you know, like a top 32 team versus another top 4 teams, even drastically different in reality. Like it's be a fun experience, no doubt.
Yeah. Just, you know, get beat 50-1 and be happy with the 1. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. There is one more question I want to ask you on just about work development, because we've talked about it a lot here. I know Travis has brought it up a lot, and that's really about working from home in terms of game development. So, you know, we've heard a lot in the game industry about when COVID hit and all these companies that really weren't prepared to go work from home or remotely, right? And how that kind of really delayed games extensively in some cases, depending on the studio. But I know you've also been pretty vocal about on Twitter about working from home, your experience with it, how Respawn handles it. And I realize you obviously can't speak for the hundreds or thousands of studios that manage things differently, but just your experience around what that's like trying to develop in a collaborative environment, typically in game development, now working basically remotely, and you know what your thoughts are on that overall.
Well, so I will say first and foremost, it's definitely harder. Working from home requires way more of both the organization and the developers. I think even for me personally, it took a lot of growth for me to become an effective person to work from home, a lot of discipline to consistently be able to do my work. Like it's so easy to be distracted and whatnot. But the thing is, I think it actually benefits both me personally and even the organization. I think that a lot of studios lean on the in-house for both their processes and technology in a way that can be detrimental, I think, in my opinion. So for example, like lots of studios technology, they leverage a lot of like local network in their tools, right? Using a fast, you know, LAN network to do certain things. And when you then try to perform the same workflow over a, you know, network connection, remote connection, that suddenly becomes runs into issues, or maybe not be as stable or even a viable workflow. And so a lot of studios leverage that really heavily. And so there are benefits in ways that like, some things are more simple. You can put resources internally in your studio and then have them fast and accessible for anyone who's in the building. It's also easier to secure and all this. So there's like all these reasons why in office is easier for lots of people. But the thing is, go ahead.
Sorry, just one point on that I've heard, and whether or not that's true. Speaking along the internal LAN and kind of the server network that you can do I've heard that's really important with like file exchange. So for instance, if you're trying to, you know, upload like a large file, which would have been damn near instant internally, right? Trying to do that over someone who's maybe on a less than ideal broadband connection at home is near impossible, or it can take days, whereas it used to take minutes or hours.
It actually took IGN about 3 years to finally recreate the internal file sharing server that we had at the office, because when the office went away after COVID, everybody was just sort of like using Google Drive and different disparate systems, and it was really not working out, and we finally got a solution. So I'm on the new, like, you know, remote server, and it's fantastic, but it took a really, really long time for us to even get parity with what we had in the office. And I imagine it's a lot more expensive because it's not just like running wires and hooking up a server in a closet, a black box somewhere. It's like, you know, you have to pay for probably a subscription service and hosted cloud servers and all
business internet
stuff.
And hosted.
So
Space, exactly. Yeah.
Like think about the difference between, like, say you have 10 QA folks in a small studio or something, and there's like a build, like a build, like a dev build may say for, be 60 to 100 gigs or something for a fairly large multiplayer game. And so you got 10 devs who have to copy over a local network, that many files to their machine, right? Now move those machines outside of the building. Like, I don't know how much people know about, just internet technology, but now you have 10 devs all over the United States who have to copy the same amount of files over an internet connection that may differ vastly between the two of them. One may have a gigabit connection, somebody may not. And so I think these introduce problems in the development cycle that are actually really helpful, because these also represent the relationship to your players. Your players are downloading these big builds too over connections that may or may not be good. And so I think a lot of the benefit actually comes in that if your organization commits to, especially when you're making a multiplayer game or a large scale distributed game, if you commit to principles that like keep this in mind, you're going to end up with systems that can consistently deliver updates at a regular cadence to your players too. I think that, when you don't ever run into these like sort of problems with, okay, like, well, let's think about our patching solution. We really have to make sure that our patches are as small as possible. So we have to be smart about what we're putting in there and very, deliberate, because our players have to download a 60 gig update, right? Right. That's something that now your developers feel internally too, right? Like so I think that in lots of ways, this actually prepares us better for live service environment, because the distributed nature with which we're working more closely resembles the live production environment. Interesting. And so I think like it is harder. It is, you have to be more strict, no doubt. It requires more deliberate work to make it work. But if you do it well, I think that it's easier to develop and ship games to players, because like I said, the way that you're developing internally follows a similar model. And there are technology solutions to those things. And I think there are also benefits to, folks like me, like, I working from home is really important to me. I suffer from really pretty bad panic attacks and social anxiety. And, to be fully transparent, like, I'm an Army veteran and I deal with, PTSD and mental health related stuff. It's really hard to deal with that in a public environment. I feel way more better like coping or soothing or doing whatever I need to do in my personal space, but I can also be effective and use my skills professionally. And I want to work on games. So there's a whole slew of developers just like me who have experience too, who are able to do better work because, this environment accommodates that. And, working in a studio, I'm very easily distracted. And a lot of times for a long time, I would go to the studio, I'd do the 8 hours I needed to be there. And then I'd go and do the actual work that I'd planned for the day, because now I have peace and quiet and wasn't distracted by a million different things. And I have a much better work-life balance and overall health because of that. So yeah, I'm sorry. I think it's great both for teams retaining talent too, because there's a lot of people that don't want to move across the country every time they get a new studio job. So I think there's lots of benefits both to the players and the developers.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I've heard kind of mixed things, because a lot of the people I know are either on like the creative side where they're like writing a story, or on the game design side where it's like the lag in communication time doing things remotely, or rather than tapping somebody on the shoulder or getting everybody in a conference room and hashing it out on a whiteboard, it's like you're slacking someone and then they're going, okay, put it on my calendar, and then you're meeting on Zoom, and it just slows the process down a lot. And so there's a lot of people in the game development sector that I've talked to who are like, working from home is a nightmare. It makes everything take 10 times as long and all that, and they're frustrated by it. So
I think there are definitely disciplines where that's true. In fact, like I absolutely agree. Like I think if I were working in production or design, like it would be way harder to work, because there is this like real time feedback that is really valuable. So no doubt, I think finding a structure that allows individual teams, not entire studio teams, to work in a way that accommodates them is super important. And that's what Respawn does. Like for example, my team, we have like 10 like software engineers on the build and release team for Apex. And we are all over the United States and Canada. We have people from Montreal, North Carolina to Vancouver, California, Washington. We're all over the place. And we have production teams that are LA based. Right?
Yeah, so I think the one size fits all model previously doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I think, varies from team to team. There's some teams where I think remote is really the only thing that makes sense. And it sounds like your guys' team's benefited from it in a ton of other ways. So it's cool.
Yeah, luckily being a part of EA, they have like a larger global structure, that makes it possible and made that infrastructure easier. Smaller studios aren't going to be able to do that, so I think it's not a one size fits all solution, but for me, I think it's something that you should have on the table, no doubt, for specific people in specific roles.
Except the Ori and the Blind Forest studio. They're the only ones who seem to be small and do remote, and I don't know how they do that, but it's crazy.
I actually met the leadership team from that studio because my old roommate was their community manager for Ori. And so I went to LA and at the E3 and hung out with like the founder and got to meet with them and talk to them about like their principals studio. Actually even resulted in me getting one of the connections. The guy, I can't remember, his name's Matthew. He now works on Jedi Survivor at Respawn because he reached out after that connection. It was like, hey, what's the feel on Respawn? Small story.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Small world.
Yeah, it goes back to the whole connection thing we talked about, right? Knowing
Absolutely.
people. So, well, man, your insight's been fantastic, Tyler. Thank you so much. I think, we're gonna move on to let Hoeg talk a little bit with his insight around FTC versus Microsoft. We had a couple days of that this week, and more revelations, if you will, from
Wasn't
inside
that
there.
fun getting to see the whole game industry determine how injunction rules should work in the federal?
Yeah. And everyone knows what's going to happen, Hoeg.
Yes, I told that.
It was fun. I thoroughly enjoyed the back half of that because there's a lot of prep work and like, they're asking like super basic questions and stuff like that, like what is a live service game and what is a MMO and all this stuff. But then they got to like the actual argument meat. Yeah, setting the record. Yeah, there's a lot of record setting, I think. And then they got to the fun part. Like I thought closing arguments was just like so much fun. I was like, dude, if law was all this, like that would be what I would be interested in, because it was just straight up open debate pretty much with the judge just grilling everyone, and it was really down to
Travis
earth.
just parachutes in for opening and closing.
Yeah, dude, it was cool.
All the depots and all the work that actually gets the record back.
Yeah, it was way more fun than the rest.
Sounds about right.
Stuff.
Let me go ahead and outro Tyler here, guys, so we can talk on the FTC. He's got to run. Tyler, man, thank you so much. I won't call you Ains with hair, but you do have a permanent addition or welcome invite to the show. If I have to remove Travis or something, it's fine. We can do that. Don't worry about it. You can just take it.
Should I wear a tie? Tie guy Tyler.
You could. Tie guy Tyler. There you go. That even sounds better.
Man.
See, it already works better. Travis is not amused at this conversation, by the way. But no, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. I know we've been talking for a long time about this, so I was glad we could finally do it. And your insight and the conversation today is super appreciative. So thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I love, opportunity to talk about games. This is sort of a new thing for me. I haven't really done a format like this before, so I appreciate y'all like letting me go through the motions. And awesome discussion. I could talk about games for.
We appreciate EA letting you. So.
Yeah, big time.
Me too.
Yeah. It took longer than you think.
It's always been a stressful thing, but it's really cool to get that sort of support from the org to go out there, and because devs want to do it and gamers want and players want to hear, right? So
yeah, no, it's awesome, man. So I'll put all your contact information in the description. I'll be in touch with you, of course, and just thank you again, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one.
Yeah, have a good one, buddy.
Yes.
All right, boys.
Now we got to talk about how much Travis likes the legal process.
Just part of it. Just one specific part of it. We're kind of, the pageantry and kind of the structure fell away, and they were just hashing stuff out. I liked that part. That was cool.
I get to move people around. Bear with me here. There we go.
Okay.
Hey, we're back to our old school.
Now I can argue with Hoeg again. He's down.
Yeah, we haven't done this in like a month.
Fighting pit.
There you go. Let's go.
I don't think you're going to fight with me. I mean, I think the one most important thing I would communicate on the closing arguments and what you might see reported on the internet, on Twitter, if it's on for you, if it's working, or otherwise from other shows that maybe aren't as good as ours, is this notion that you can interpret what the judge said as questions and then know exactly what the opinion is going to be at the end of the day. That is not the way these things work. And what I would caution people, and I do have a Twitter thread about this, most specifically is that judges can ask questions to set the record. They can ask questions to play devil's advocate. They can ask questions just because they think the one side isn't doing what they should be doing. But while it might sound one way or the other in terms of the questions asked, and it is certainly the case that the judge had many more questions for the FTC than Microsoft during the closing arguments, we can interpret those things, but if it comes around as the opposite of what you think is going to happen in the opinion, it's probably because the judge didn't have as many concerns about the other side of the equation, right? So when we think about a hearing like this one, just understand that whether it's me or someone else telling you what they think of a case, legal analysis or otherwise, there are no guarantees on any of this. And what we're talking about is reading the mind of one specific person who is going to be thinking about this topic for the long weekend and beyond while they write up a document to explain whether they grant a preliminary injunction or not.
Mm-hmm. Which may have already been written, right? A lot of judges do that. They kind of write a lot of their or they have their staff.
I doubt that the determination was made before that closing, but
yeah,
they definitely
also,
have working on things.
My understanding is sometimes when a judge seems like they're being harder on one side of the house, it's because they already kind of know what the outcome is going to be, and they're trying to like not make it appear like they went easy on the opposite side, right? They're trying to like vet for it so that way, if somebody tried to appeal, they'd be like, "Look, nobody could say I was, was biased to you because I went super hard on you during the actual in court, right?"
Well, and the appeal question is interesting. Like everybody says, well, this is appealable, isn't it? And it's like, yes, but what we're talking about is an equitable determination, right? This isn't something that is a question of law realistically, unless they just write the opinion completely wrong. So the appeals court is going to have a limited impact in this particular instance because the law says, Judge, you go think about whether you think this side could win, the FTC, and if they could, who it'll hurt or help in the public, Microsoft, Activision, and the FTC for granting or not granting the preliminary injunction. And then you're going to balance those things in your head and come out with a determination, and you're going to write what your thought process was. And unless you're crazy and you write something that's completely off book and doesn't match even what I just described, the appeals court is going to be limited to, yeah, okay, that's the discretion of the court. It is not the kind of thing that an appeals court is likely to change. This is a preliminary injunction. So what we've got here is determination. I saw some people in the chat asking when it's likely to come down. Shortly after the 4th of July, 5th, 6th, or 7th is what I would expect.
Be my guess.
And when they make this determination, they're going to have an opinion that goes with it, and it's going to say things like, here are the relevant markets, and it does sound like the judge is amenable to the cloud being a relevant market, which is not something I would grant, but it does put Microsoft on the back foot on that question, and is going to explain the relevant markets and whether or not they think the Federal Trade Commission can make a merits-based case, ultimately, to block the deal in a federal court. And they're going to determine whether or not Microsoft or Activision or the FTC would be hurt more or helped more by the granting or not granting, respectively. So that document is going to be important at the end of the day, but there's a wildly different approach to a court that says, oh yeah, the Federal Trade Commission has a slam dunk here, granted. And there's some weaknesses in the case, and I'm not really sure about this market and how it'll be affected by Activision content, but in the interest and abundance of caution, the court is going to determine to maintain the status quo by preventing the deal from going through. Like, those are two different documents, right?
Yep.
And they have the same outcome. So the report on IGN or GameSpot or wherever can still say Microsoft wins, Microsoft loses, whatever. But the opinion is going to matter. The rationality is going to matter. You're not going to say that? I think you're going to report on this ultimately.
Oh, we reported on it, but we didn't claim that one side was going to win or not. We talked about
I meant after it happens that you can actually describe it one way or the other. But
sure.
But like, that's what I really wanted to communicate. And you can see me tweeting throughout the closing arguments, especially when the judge was really much more active. But
it was great.
I think that there's a lot happening in this case that a lot of people are very self-interested in for one reason or another, and are guaranteeing to you that one thing is going to happen or not. And I'm telling you, there is a broad swath of totally legitimate legal determinations that go both directions. which means that
Totally.
what you're trying to do is read the mind of a single federal judge.
Yeah. So I have an opinion on something that Connor asked about this, which was it a strategy by the FTC to spend so much time arguing over the weakest part of their case in console and leave the cloud part pretty murky and unclear? So I was actually thinking about this weekend, and I do agree the console is the weakest argument because of how narrowly they have to define that market to make it seem like an antitrust issue, right? They have to get rid of Switch and PC, and it has to be US only and all that other stuff. My theory about why they focused on that instead of cloud, which I think cloud is a much better argument, is because my understanding is that in order for a preliminary injunction to be granted, it has to have like immediate and irreparable harm. And I think that is very, very hard to argue on the cloud side, right? So
the standards for preliminary injunction, which you're probably picking up from more normal course litigations, has an irreparable harm component, has that immediacy component. The FTC is empowered by the Federal Trade Act. So basically, they're allowed to go and ask for a preliminary injunction if they can say that the public interest would be best served by granting a preliminary injunction.
Right. Okay.
Which means
so
you're
it's an even
balancing
lower
the
barrier.
equities. You're balancing the equities where you can drag in a lot of the other concepts in preliminary injunction law, like irreparability and immediacy, if you're so inclined, but the judge doesn't have to. You're balancing the equities of the two sides, and then you're basically saying it's in the public interest to grant. Because
it did seem like they were talking about immediacy, because every time cloud came up, Microsoft was like, dude, this technology isn't going to be a thing for a long while. Like they were kind of leaning on the immediacy of it, right?
Well, Microsoft is focusing on saying it's not a market, right?
Yeah.
So the preliminary threshold the FTC has to meet is that there's a relevant market at issue here. So they said consoles, and they said game subscription services, and they said cloud. And cloud has always been a rough argument to actually say is an economic relevant market for antitrust law. And Microsoft says, this thing here is a wisp. We don't know.
Yeah,
the
it's a feature.
The FTC says you've invested billions, and every time you talk about it in a show, you say it's the future of gaming. Microsoft says, yeah, well, puffery, right?
We're hoping that it will be. Yeah, exactly. I do think the cloud argument is actually pretty good. I thought the FTC's best moment during the closing argument was when the judge said, okay, but why would you be worried about the cloud when Microsoft is signing all of these deals? And the FTC said something along the lines of, well, that was really nice of them to choose which of their competitors they get to participate, right? Because I think there is an argument there, right, that Microsoft isn't agreeing to make Call of Duty available on the Amazon Luna or on Google's, whatever their platform will probably be in the future, cloud platform, because I think that's an argument, right? That you're choosing your competitors and kind of choosing who's going to get to be a viable option in the market by guaranteeing Call of Duty on their platform. I thought that was a good moment, and the FTC didn't pursue it, and that perplexed me a little bit, that they were so focused on console. They really thought that was a winner, because to me it so obviously seemed like a bad argument.
Yeah, I think that's because their biggest backer source of information is Sony, right, which is most concerned about console. And so most of the arguments they had were lined up against console. This is one of the other reasons why the Competition Markets Authority in the UK, their actual finding document they block on based on cloud is like 80% console. I mean, there's all sorts of disconnects between what's been happening in this case and what the reality of the gaming industry actually is, because you get up to consoles and you say, well, you can't kick Switch. That's ridiculous. But also, is keeping Call of Duty going to kill PlayStation? Well, that's a helpful Jim Ryan email that says no. So that's what you present.
And also the answer is no to anybody with 2 cents.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and as soon as they make the argument, I have a video on YouTube up going, this is ridiculous. They know it's ridiculous. This is
the thing I wanted to shout most in the courtroom was like every time they referred to Generation 9 console and how that was a very specific relevant market, and I just wanted to be like, nobody thinks of it that way. Nobody thinks of Generation 9. It's not a metric that matters to anyone. Like, it's about the games you can play, and on Nintendo and PC you can play a lot of the same games. And I just like, as a gamer, it was a little frustrating to see them get stuck on like jargon that no consumer actually gives a hoot about. Most people don't know what Gen 9 console means,
Yeah, and that's the practical indicia, right? Which the Federal Trade Commission promised would be apparent why their definitions were correct, and it's not. It's completely wrong. But the more interesting thing about that from market definition to me is that there was a lot of market participant testimony and emails and documents they use to try to establish what they're talking about. And that's never been the most important thing when analyzing an economic market, right? It doesn't matter what Microsoft thinks of the Switch. It matters what the Switch actually is in the marketplace. And so they try to get gotchas. Well, Microsoft talks about Sony more. It's like, yeah, they're closer competitors. That doesn't mean Switch isn't a competitor at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a fight that they're going to lose. They're going to lose on console. I don't think that there's really any question that they didn't meet any of their burdens.
So you think if the injunction's granted, it's a cloud reason, right?
Or game subscriptions, but yes, I think that if it's granted, it'll be on one of those. And I think cloud, because of what the EU found and what the UK found, has a certain amount of political usefulness, right? Don't be surprised if whatever you heard the judge say, she says, well, cloud is a question mark, and on a question mark, I'd rather maintain the status quo. Courts are conservative, small c institutions. So they like to keep things the way they are, and they've got a government agency telling them that very bad things will happen if they don't do this. So when you think about it that way, you can see how a court, even if they don't necessarily believe the FTC fully, would come out and say, let's just be careful and let's issue that preliminary injunction. Also, I don't believe you, Microsoft and Activision, that you're just going to walk away from $70 billion deal. So, I mean, some of that is...
I don't either, by the way.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody...
They're not going to.
But you do get a lot of that. You just, well, Bobby Kotick said the Activision would walk away. It's like, well,
you believe Bobby Kotick now? Have you seen what he's been up to?
Yeah. Punching children is what I last heard.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where people have asked me a lot about it over this week, and I think that it is more likely than not, minimally so, that the injunction does not issue, because I don't think the Federal Trade Commission came very close to the burdens that they have to bear to get an injunction. Remember, the default rule is that you can buy things in America. That includes big things. The default rule is that Microsoft's allowed to spend $70 billion in cash, give it to Activision shareholders, and get Activision back.
Yeah.
That is the default rule. You have to have a separate circumstance that allows them to stop it. And the Federal Trade Commission, I don't think, has ever been very likely to win the ultimate federal case. So you have to find some amount of chance for them to actually win in order to grant the injunction. I don't think the court is likely to do that, but I do think that it is a close enough question that you should be thinking about it in your head as basically 50-50.
That's how I'm thinking about it. And I think I'm on the opposite side, Hoeg. I actually think I'm 50-50, and I think it probably will get granted. But I don't think it'll be granted for any reason we saw in court. I think people are distracted by a lot of the stuff we didn't see, the numbers we didn't see, the documents that were redacted, and the cloud argument that was not made in court at all, maybe for reasons you pointed out, that they had a lot of PlayStation stuff. But I assume that they have some cloud stuff. There's no way they didn't see the CMA's findings and include that somewhere in the written version that they submitted on Friday. So I feel like there's enough stuff that I don't know that where I'm giving it a 50-50, and if I had to guess, if you pushed me, I'd be like, yeah, I think it's going to be granted. I don't think they'll win when it goes to trial at all, but I think the injunction will be granted. I think we'll see.
Right. And the unusual thing about that thought process, Travis, is that if the injunction is granted, there's going to be a section of that opinion that says basically, here's how the Federal Trade Commission could ultimately win. And
yep.
That has to
It'll probably be about cloud, right? It'll be like focus on this instead of the console thing.
So what happens next? Like
next week, there will be an injunction granted or denied.
Okay, so like let's say it was one or the other. I mean, just give me the various.
Yeah, okay, so if the preliminary injunction is denied, my expectation is that Microsoft would be working with the CMA behind the scenes and either get a settlement or another ability to close the deal over them, and that they are likely to move forward very quickly in the early part of July, before they have to deal with amending the contract for Activision on July 18th.
Okay, and if it is.
And then if then also the FTC would have the option in that scenario, Dan, of still going through with the trial and suing them, even though they would just have to untangle the company after they've merged, presumably.
Which is another reason why Microsoft has promised to silo Activision, right? When we talk about how the court is thinking about a preliminary injunction, the court is determining what bad things will happen if I don't issue it. And the FTC says, well, it'd be impossible to untangle. And then Microsoft says, no, we're going to keep it separate, just like we did with Bethesda. So if you need to untangle it, it just pops right out.
Yeah.
So if they grant
the other one is if they grant it, then they are not allowed to complete the purchase, and then the full trial will presumably happen. Microsoft and Activision are saying that they will
cancel the deal, but I think that's complete bullshit personally, because they only have to wait like a month, right? I think the trial is set for early August or something. So it wouldn't be the end of the world. I think
they've made it pretty clear that they'll go to trial.
No, they're saying the opposite. They're saying
Microsoft told the court in this hearing that the deal will fall apart.
Of course.
And then Bobby Kotick and Activision said we're going to walk away. So no, I have tweets out that say nope. When you read any of this stuff from an adversarial position, try to understand what advantage you have for any given position that you assert. So Microsoft is trying to say, if you enjoin this, very bad things will happen. Every benefit that gamers are going to get from this deal, as they present them, obviously, are going to go away, and you are going to have stepped in front of the biggest deal in the industry's history. So know what you're doing, Judge.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I think if the preliminary injunction is granted, you find a board of directors and shareholder group at Activision that is maybe not so inclined to walk away from $70 billion all
No kidding. We do have a super chat here. Just a question for you from Cybernox, good friend. What's up, Cyber? Good to see you. Dan, I got it, dude. Oh, go ahead.
No, it doesn't matter. Cyber, thank you for the super chat. Hello, all. Do you think it was strategic or was it an afterthought by Microsoft during the closing arguments not mentioning Destiny when discussing COD?
I don't think Destiny matters, realistically.
I don't think so.
Destiny isn't big enough compared to Call of Duty. And yeah, I know Destiny's huge and people love it, but it's not the same numbers.
I also think it was strategic because PlayStation very importantly and publicly did not make that game exclusive. So I think it works against their argument about the arms race to buying up exclusive content, because that wasn't an exclusivity play. And I think, it wouldn't have been useful for them to bring that one up. There's plenty of other things they could have brought up that I would have loved to scream out in the courtroom, but can't do that apparently.
More power to you for keeping quiet.
Yeah, it's good.
I would need video of you being escorted out of the courtroom. That would be awesome. Yeah. That would become our season gaming intro.
Yep.
I muttered to myself. Does that count?
Knox, thank you, brother. Good to see you out there. Thank you for the super chat.
Man, I don't know.
Anything else?
Like it to be over. How about that? So we can not talk about it anymore, because it is so confusing to me, and I don't know. I don't benefit either way. Really?
Yeah, I like some of the magazines online were like FTC versus Microsoft is over. Like when they did closing arguments, I was like, this is the end of the beginning, my friend.
Yeah,
preliminary hearing.
This is technically a trailer for the trial. I think either way, Dan, I would not be surprised if the FTC goes through with the lawsuit, even if they're not granted the injunction, which I think would be a terrible idea. But
the FTC is crazy right now.
Yeah, they're acting unhinged. And then if it is granted, then Microsoft is, I think, 95% going to go through with the trial. So I think you're going to hear about it for at least another year. Would be my guess, maybe more. I don't know. We'll see.
God, that's remember when people played games and we talked about them on Twitter. Hey man, everybody play Final Fantasy. Said, yeah, it was great.
I will never understand
until hour 3 here.
Oh.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I think that'll wrap us up for today. There's a couple other game topics I wanted to talk to, but we're at 2.5 hours, and we've been going for a while, so we'll catch up next week. More importantly, today, of course, was having Tyler on and getting some of his insight and conversation, which I really, really love. Yep. So, we've been working on that for a while. He had to get Respawn's approval and go through all these motions to join today. So definitely check him out on Twitter. Like I said, I'll put his information in the description. He often does like tweet threads where he talks about development or misconceptions or other things. He's fantastic. Seriously, he's awesome. So make sure you're checking that out and following him whenever Twitter decides to work again.
Yes, use one of your 600 tweets.
Yeah, don't hit your limit. Be careful there. But regardless, it's been a great week for gaming and everything else. Thank you for hanging out with us today. I think for Season Gaming side, I'll keep it quick here. I did put an article up on Friday about Xbox, actually. And I think I mentioned this last week, but basically where their thoughts are in the future, things that I heard in LA and some of the interviews and stuff. So I wrote that up. If you want to check that out, it provides some insight into their thoughts on their first party, cadence of delivery, those types of things. We did Cast Co-op again this week. Episode 45 is on the channel as well. You can check that out. And I'm going to be doing a review this week of the Audeze Maxwell headset. This is the high-end headset that you can get for Xbox PC or PlayStation PC. It's absolutely fantastic, but I want to do a full overview on it because it's more of an audiophile headset for gaming, but it's excellent. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully later this week. Travis?
Yeah, I've got a review of Everybody 1-2 Switch that's going to be live in the middle of this week that you could look out for. And then my next review is Remnant 2, the online multiplayer Souls-like with Dark Souls with guns, it's sometimes called about, sequel. Yeah, I'm very excited to review that. So look out for that at some point in July. And that's some of the stuff I'm working on. I'm working on so many cool things I can't talk about right now, unfortunately, but I'll show you them later in like August or something. Yay.
I think I asked you this before, and I don't know if you can say, but are you going to be the one reviewing Remnant 2 for IGN?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm excited about that because that comes out in a couple weeks.
It does. I'm getting the code in a couple days. So
awesome.
Nice.
Very excited.
Cool. Hoeg, hit us.
Yes. Well, we just did Lawyers and Dragons yesterday, and we'll be continuing to do that on the channel. A lot of folks have wanted me to do some virtual legalities on the FTC hearing, and I apologize for not being able to get up to doing that. We're still working through rehabilitation and therapy, but for those of you that are interested in the channel and legal analysis, I have been told by my occupational therapist to go and work on videos as part of my therapy. So
cool.
We'll see if anything pops out of that, because I'm also supposed to throw them in the trash if I don't like them. So we'll see how that process plays out. But the occupational therapist is trying to get more videos for y'all.
That's good, man. Well, we'll see, obviously. So that'll be good. It'll be exciting when you're able to get back to that full time, because I know you love it and miss it. So
I do. Well, it was hard this week, man. Everybody in the world's talking about this thing on my timeline.
Well, at least they could educate you on it. You know what I mean?
Yes. A lot of that.
My goal is never to educate people on this stuff because, I'm not a lawyer and also I don't care, but I think it's okay to have opinions. Lawyers don't have a monopoly on knowing things or having opinions about things that are happening in the world. And I think that's fine. My problem is that when you don't know about these things and you make very declarative statements about what is going to happen in the process or what the 100% chance of the injunction not being granted and all this noise that I'm just like, dude, like I was in the room and I don't even claim to know what's happening. You know what I mean? Like it's anybody's guess. So
could you solve that problem for us on social media, Travis? Could you fix that?
I will do my best to anybody who steps to me. I will do the appropriate and equitable.
I don't think I've heard that phrasing in maybe 20 years, but I like it.
Well, I grew up in Oakland in the 90s. What do you want from me? This is what I know.
Start waving his
I hope
arms
you don't
around
get
and-
jumped while you're at it.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Chat, you've been awesome today. Thank you for hanging out with us. As always, appreciate all of you. We're going to go ahead and get out of here because it's been a long one today. Have a good Sunday. Have a good July 4th. Safe, happy. Hope you get some rest time in with family or whatever it is you like to do. And we will see you next Sunday. Peace.